I learn, I feel like I still know less. When I knew less, I thought I know it all. We prescribe exercises as a medication. We call it movement as medicine. When somebody says, I have this 10-year of pain, discomfort, dysfunctions that wasn't there, and I tried everything and you are the one who helped me, you cannot buy that. You have so much flexibility in this profession. You don't actually have to work more than 40 hours because you have a decent earning.
Okay, that's a lot of money. The reality is, not everyone who's applying got straight A's and B's.
You are there in school 8 to 5, Monday to Friday, and if you think weekends are there for you to have fun, weekends are there for you to study. The first semester is going to be the toughest. There'll be a lot of dropouts, because they fail. You will learn what you need to know, but if you want to learn more, the sky's the limit there. You want to be a chef. You don't want to be a cook.
Once you start the 3+3, what if you're like, nah, I hate this? So today with me to discuss the profession of a physical therapist, I have the owner of MMA and Sports Rehab, the recipient of the award for the best physical therapist in Northern Virginia in 2021. He also holds a doctorate in manual therapy and physical therapy, and overall is a very accomplished physical therapist. Dr. Ujjwal Shakya, thank you for making it here.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's a great opportunity to be here today, and thank you for choosing this. And first of all, I'd like to really congratulate you on creating this great platform for, I guess, students who are looking out for different careers, and such a novel thought. And so really, congratulations on this. And hopefully, I'm going to bring some insights on PT profession and with some cool stuff we're going to talk about today. Thank you so much.
Well, I appreciate it. I am trying to make a holistic, centralized career repository. So physical therapy is definitely a really, really cool profession. I think actually it's a profession I would have enjoyed going into because my first undergraduate degree was life sciences. So I did all the bio-sci, all that stuff.
Yes.
I used to get injured a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I used to be a basketball fanatic and still am, but haven't played much. But I used to break a lot of things and, injure myself all the time. So I was really interested in the kinesiology aspect, but I never even contemplated pursuing this career. And then learning about it later, I was just like, I think I would have been a good physical therapist. But so I'm interested in hearing about,
Sure.
like how did you actually want to, why did you want to become a physical therapist?
That's a great question. So going back to my history and my story, I'm from Nepal. It's a small mountainous country between China and India. I grew up there, and I grew up in a joint family system, where I have my dad, his couple of brothers, and we're like 20 people living it was a big house. It was crazy, but it was awesome. And
20 people.
20 people, yeah.
Wow.
20 people. It's very, very common back there, and everybody lived together. Everybody had so much fun, and growing up like that. My cousin, his name is Sankalpa, he was diagnosed with hemophilia, which is a bleeding disorder, and through his hemophilia, he had a lot of issues in his joint, and he had a lot of knee pain, elbow pain, back pain. He ended up going into India for a lot of treatments, and that's where I get to know physical therapy, because he was getting a lot of physical therapy treatments. And that was my first, I would say, introduction to the physical therapy profession, And if I want to talk a little bit about my life, I was a big sports fanatic, and I played a lot of cricket, ping pong, in a lot of different levels, And after I graduating, should I say SLC, which is school living certificate, which is 10th grade, I wanted to go to India, And I told my dad I want to go to India. And the reason I want to go to India was to play cricket, I want to play cricket at a high level. And I told my dad, and my dad was, yeah, let's go. And India, especially South India, was very known for in a good school, So my dad was really okay with that. I did went to the school. But the irony was, the school that I ended up going did not have cricket. It was so bad. It was so bad. But the good thing was they had basketball. I ended up playing basketball from high school. And long story short, I came to U.S. in 2001. Went to school in Texas, University of Texas in Arlington. And I ended up graduating with a bachelor in the biotechnology and a minor in chemistry. And And after I graduated, basically I was into research and I was doing genetics, DNA and RNA hybridization. I was in the basically in the lab, being like a scientist. And but I got really, really bored by that lifestyle, And if you look back, and my dad, being from Southeast Asian country and Asian family, my dad has like one of the son will be engineer or one of the son will be doctor. So my older brother is a civil engineer, and being a doctor was ingrained in me by my dad, and from day one, I would say. And going back to after I graduated, like obviously I thought about going to med school, and because of long schooling and extra cost issues, and I thought about different route. And one of my good friend from family friend from Canada offered me, or should I say, give me advice on going to PT route, which is a physical therapy. And looking back, went to do volunteer to this great clinic inside Texas Rangers Stadium, And when I went there, it was awesome. I just saw a stadium, a baseball stadium, saw athletes being treated, and a lot of cool stuff. And I was like, yeah, that's what I want to do. And next thing I know, I went to volunteer a couple of more clinics, and I ended up working in the hospital for 1 year as a PT aide, which all helped me to kind of like know nuances of the professions, building a lot of professional relationship, and which can help me with getting all the volunteer hours, getting all the recommendation letters, and getting into PT school. And fast forward to 15 years, here I am talking with you today.
Wow, that's cool. So funny story. You went to an Indian school and you learned to play basketball.
Correct.
Right? And I mean, that's hilarious because cricket is anything and everything in India, right?
True.
I think their main sports are cricket and
Cricket
field
and
hockey.
Cricket and field hockey. Yeah.
Yeah,
I didn't
right.
care much about field hockey, but cricket was my life. I played at a decent level. I played at a high level, and I went to India because I really want to play cricket so bad.
Yeah.
And I was a big NBA fan, but in Nepal back then we didn't had a basketball course.
Yeah.
We didn't even nobody played basketball there, but I love basketball because it was cool. So in a way, I didn't get to play cricket in India, but I learned basketball. I ended up playing for school. So there's always you can make always most out of it. So that's what I did.
That's cool. I did not know that you were into basketball.
A
Right?
little, yeah. Pretty much I played all the ball and
Easy
basketball.
buckets.
I see it. I'm a big Dallas Mavericks fan,
Okay.
and I was in Dallas for 10 years, so all the Dallas teams out there.
You must be
and
happy
below
now. After Dirk, at least you guys got Luca now.
Yeah. He's been great. It's amazing. All the Europeans, it's amazing what they are doing over there. And I'm not been following as much compared to before, but before I used to leave NBA and NFL. And now I have 3 kids now. So Disney movies are my best friends right now. Yeah. And Taylor Swift, and whole thing. Yeah.
Change in life,
Yeah.
man. So, I might be going down that route as well. Just had a kid, so that's cool.
Congratulations. Yeah.
Thank you.
Life's only going to get better.
Yeah. I'm not gonna be watching basketball anymore.
True. A lot of Disneys. Yes, definitely.
That's funny. So you went from Arlington, Texas to Arlington, Virginia.
Correct.
What is it with Arlington, man?
I know, and Arlington never left me. And yes, so basically, I was in the school. I graduated. A good thing about my job is I could get a job anywhere. And my wife was here. We got married in 2005. We kind of like didn't do any big ceremony for a long time. So after I graduated, we did wedding ceremony, and she worked for GSA, which is a federal government. So I ended up moving here and with her, or for her, should I say? And then now we have 3 kids and have a business, and I'm very blessed and fortunate.
I will say Arlington is an amazing city.
It is.
I've lived in many cities, and Arlington was probably one of my favorite. So I loved it.
It's there, and it was voted one of the fittest cities in the world. Sorry, it says U.S. And there's so much out there. It's a very, very dynamic, and it's a great city.
Yeah, I had a great time. My friend would always make fun because I would say I live in DC, and he's like, no, you live in Virginia, man. And I was like right at the edge. But all right, so back to physical therapy.
Sure.
What is a physical therapist?
It's a great question. Physical therapy are healthcare professionals, and they have doctor level education. We call DPT, Doctor of Physical Therapy, and they work with patients and clients who has issues with their bodies, and we have issues with functions, and we do not actually work with the medical diagnosis. We don't treat medical diagnosis. And I'll give you an example for that. We don't treat people with diabetes in sense we're treating diabetes, but we treat people who have diabetes, who have issues with back pain, who have difficulty with lifting, who have difficulty with moving, who have difficulty with functions, we don't treat stroke, but we treat patient who has stroke, who has difficulty with moving, have people with dysfunctions, and activities of daily livings, In that sense, physical therapy, it can be very broad. We treat people from all different ages, from infants to people at the later stages of life, and we're helping them with their dysfunctions and activities and movements, And we also treat different level of patients. And we see, for example, in hospitals, we see acute care patients where we are working with their bed mobility, and we are helping them to walk for 150 yards, which is a kind of hallmark of discharge to get to home, to very high level patients are professional athletes. We're trying to improve their one-inch jump, or trying to increase the bat speed, or trying to improve their performance, So it's a very different array of things a physical therapist can do, And now, not just the function we're talking about, we are also in healthcare field where we're helping people with pain, as a society, and the medical, I would say, medical society, and also the more public awareness is going from non-opioid, approaches and treatments, and physical therapy has been considered one of the best treatments out there. We're helping people with functions through exercises, and not only that, with a lot of educations on what to do, what not to do, and a lot of things we do to improve confidence and their quality of life. We do a lot of different treatments for that.
Wow. That was an intense intro to the profession. So one of the, I asked people for feedback. One of my friends was telling me, he's like, hey man, you're looking really intense at the camera.
Yeah.
And I think when you're actually conducting the interview, you get these intense answers and you get zoned in, right? And that was one of the moments that I caught myself, and I'm like, oh, I'm zoned in
Thank
and
you.
focused as hell. That was an awesome intro. So that's what physical therapy is about, folks. How many years of experience do you have as a physical therapist?
I graduated in 2010, so I have 14 years of experience as a licensed PT now, yes.
Okay. And the name of your practice, it's your practice, right?
Correct.
It's called MMA and Sports Rehab. Tell me a little bit about that.
Oh, it's a great story actually, and I'm in a field of MMA, which is mixed martial arts. My brother-in-law, Vivek, he's a professional fighter, and he also has MMA gym in Arlington, Virginia, which is called Pentagon Mixed Martial Arts. And it was his idea actually to help the fellow fighters and all the gym goers to help with their issues, And so I was always treating people at the gym, and he gave me an idea. Why don't you just start one? So I started part time, And we were pretty big in the community, so I did a lot of sports injury seminars, injury prevention seminars. So we were pretty well known then to start with. And next thing I know, I became full-time in a year. I was there for 2.5 years inside the MMA gym, functioning as a physical therapy clinic. Next thing you know, it's 2.5 years. We found a place that's 2 doors down, and we moved there. We have built quite a reputation of becoming a clinic not just treating sports injuries and post-surgical patients, but also array of patients from chronic pain, and that's one of my big interests is, in chronic pain, and also people with TMJ issues, concussion issues,
What's
vestibular.
TMJ?
TMJ is a it's basically a TMJ is a joint in your jaw. It's a temporal mandibular disorders.
Oh, because you get
So people
rocked in
with
the face.
well, that's one of them. But a lot of people have TMJ issues. Just people have headache issues, have TMJ issues. People have neck issues, have TMJ issues, or people have jaw pain, difficulty with opening the jaw, difficulty with grinding the teeth, stuff like that. And we do a lot of treatments to help with those populations, and people with a lot of balance issues, people with a lot of we call vestibular issues. People have a lot of vertigo and dizziness. We don't think about it. Physical therapy can help those things, and very effectively actually. And now, fast forward, we have made a lot of good reputations, and a lot of neurologists and a lot of rheumatologists and even orthopedists refer patient to us, and we have become almost like a place where we can be able to fix people where they're not being fixed somewhere else, so good to have the reputations. And now fast forward, we have four clinicians, of a team of four clinicians, including myself. All of them are athletes. And yes, so we do primarily a lot of sports rehab, but we see pretty much everybody and help what we can to improve patient lives.
So that's actually exactly how I heard it. One of my colleagues, when I first came to you in 2021, it had to be 2021.
Correct.
And I'll tell you why. One of my colleagues told me, go check out Dr. Ujjwal. He's the best guy, because I'd gone to like 4 different therapists, and nothing negative about anybody.
Yeah, right.
Is just that, yeah, it wasn't as holistic, I guess I would say. And so after trying so many chiropractors and all these other things, my colleague told me, Dr. Ujjwal. She didn't even say the name. She just said, go check out Dr. Ujjwal. So I'm like, all right, I'll go see who is this guy, right? And so I happened to live in Arlington at the time, and I went and visited you, and I saw that you had just won the award for the best PT in Northern Virginia. And so then I was thinking about physical therapists, and then I'm like, hey, why not call the best one?
Well, thank you so much. Thanks for your kind words. And I've been really, really been blessed with to have a lot of good people in my lives, and our patients has been awesome. They've been singing our praises, through social media, to reviews, or in a community, and I hear nothing but great things, and it's a testament of what we have done. But at the same time, I'm really blessed to have those people in our lives too, and in helping us to grow. So yes, thank you so much.
Well, if anybody is watching in the Northern Virginia area, I highly recommend Dr. Ujjwal's services.
Thank you.
And maybe just not in Northern Virginia as well. He's worth driving to. I will say that.
Thank you.
Do you know, since we're on the topic of how good of a physical therapist you are, I will say one thing that I loved about your practice was I was never put on a come here 10 times plan, right? Never, I almost felt like you were trying to get rid of me, which was an awesome feeling. It's very comfortable knowing that I saw you like once or twice. You're like, I don't need to see you again. He's like, come back if you have a problem. And I remember that. I was like, man, everyone else is trying to secure 8 or 10 appointments, and this guy's trying to get rid of me. Right. And that was a really, really cool thing. But yeah, I will say it was a great experience.
Well, the reason we do those things, obviously we're in business, we need to make money in whole 9 yards. But at the same time, we are clinician first, and if you do what we're supposed to do and provide exceptional care, business will take care of itself, And our goal is to teach patients, make them as independent as they can, And if you need more services, yes, we are there to help you, But at the same time, trying to make you as confident, and as independent, should I say the right word would be, is something that we try to strive for, At the same time, everybody's gonna be different, Some people will see a more consistently, some people don't have to see consistently. And if we take good care of you, and then like I said, people have been taking care of us.
Yeah. But I mean, you got to see it from the consumer perspective, right?
Correct.
That is something that spoke volumes to me, because right before that, I had gone for like an 8 session, and then a 4 session, then a 6 session, and that's a lot of money.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
I mean, each session is like 100 plus.
Correct.
And, it's 2024. It's probably even a little bit more now.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, after blowing like $2,000 going to see a doctor, and then the guy's telling you, I don't need to see you after 2. That was a great experience for me.
Thank you so much.
Probably a weird thing to hold on to, but anyways. So the next part of the interview, this takes probably the largest chunk, right?
Sure.
So here at My Career Shop, we are trying to carve out the entire path that an aspiring physical therapist ought to take or should take in order to become a physical therapist as of 2024. So why don't you take me through it?
Sure. I think the question is how to become a PT, right? Okay. And this is a great question, because anybody who wants to become a PT, I think, needs to know, these are certain, I think, ideas and steps, I would say. I can go by step by step. I think the first step is you got to start early. Don't do what I did, because I was unsure about my major. I was unsure about what I want to do. Even though I want to be a clinician, I want to be a doctor, I want to be something that, very relevant to what I wanted to do, but I was a little unsure in my undergrad. Don't be like me, you got to start early. I recommend start early as in high school. There's a saying like, you become what you think, right? So if you want to become a physical therapist, you can start shadowing a physical therapist, from an early age if you can, like, get your hours, And what happens is that when you start looking and do more for volunteership is on a physical therapy clinic and you start to learn what a physical therapy is. You start to learn what a physical therapist does. You start to learn different diagnoses. You start to learn what different treatments are. So you learn a lot of nuances and intricacy of the professions by just observing, And then when you start doing that, that will kind of transform into the next phases, And the next bit I would say is do well in your school.
So on that note,
Yes,
shadowing I think is a requirement for some schools.
correct.
They won't
Correct.
even take you unless you have. It's not much. Some schools I saw was 30.
Yes,
Some schools were like 100.
correct.
Right. So shadowing seems to be a requirement.
Yes, and if you look at a lot of schools, there are some school doesn't require shadowing, but most of the school requires shadow requirement. I recommend, I would say at least 100, 200, like in the shadow hours. I did more than 200, and I would even recommend don't just do one thing. For example, oh, you would really like this clinic and you really like this physical therapist. Don't spend 200 hours with this person. Spend some good time, but make sure you go to different routes. Go to different physical therapists. Physical therapists are everywhere, in hospitals, in outpatient clinics, in a lot of different places. So try to seek out different type of physical therapists, different type of physical treatments, And what that helps is, one, you get to see a lot of different things, because usually what happens is you end up needing to know what physical therapy is and how to become a physical therapist or what makes you become a physical therapist. So these are the questions that people are going to ask you in the interview. These are the questions that you will be asked when you write an essays. So you're going to get a lot of those answers by being in those situations, and it will help you a lot. I recommend more than 200 hours. Don't go for a minimum. It's only getting harder and harder to get into physical therapy school, and you need to separate from the crowd, and I think you owe it to yourself in a sense, even though you feel like 200 hours is a long time. But if you look at the big scheme things, 200 is not much because, you are only helping yourself if you really want to get into the profession. Or after being in those hours and you decided that's not what you want to do, well, you learn right now.
Yeah. So how do you get these shadowing opportunities? Is there like a website or something where it says come shadow here, or do you just walk up to a PT clinic and be like, hey, let me just watch you?
There might be a lot of agencies who might do that, but I recommend just go old school. Just call the
But
people.
how is it measured?
Oh, how does it measure that you have the
Yeah,
showers?
can't I, if it was that laissez-faire, can't I just walk up to like somebody and just say, hey, here's like 100 hours done?
Well, it has to be verified by the professionals. So, for example, you
Okay.
get like 50 hours in this clinic, and there's a website through APTA, which is called American Physical Therapy Association, and it's called PTCAS, which is a physical therapy centralized applicant service, and that's where you have to put your hours, and they will have to verify from where you got that hours. So basically,
Okay.
if I was your clinician and you are my student and you put those hours, I'll get an email and they'll verify with me this student get this hours from you, and you have to verify that.
Okay. And amount.
An amount, correct.
So is there like a certificate that you sign off that you spend 20 hours with me, 30 hours with me,
Yes,
12?
you will have to sign off on the email that you get in and to verify, like some kind of yes. Yeah, I would say
Okay.
yes.
All right. So shadow.
Yep.
Shadow many different types of physical therapists.
Yep, at least 3, I would say.
Okay, at least 3. And can you give me an example of 3 different types?
Sure, like I said, physical therapy professions are in a lot of different settings. For example, hospital, hospitals would be like acute care, long-term care. You'll have a neurological department. There's a pediatric department or pediatric clinics out there who only works with kids, like in infants or kids with disabilities. There are a lot of clinics out there like geriatric clinics who work with older populations. Myself, like in ours, I'm more of an outpatient and sports clinic. We see a lot of athletes. And so there are a lot of things out there. I would recommend just go to at least 3 different, so you get to see what they do. And they can be very different in a sense.
Okay. So we're done shadowing. All right. And this is, you can shadow anytime, right? Like, so you can
Correct.
even shadow So I know you recommended that you should want to become one right from high school, but there's two routes, right? One is the 3+3,
Correct.
which is if you decide to enter straight from high school, 3 years of undergrad and 3 years of
Correct.
DPT school is all combined.
Correct.
And then the other is you haven't figured it out yet.
Yes.
And during your undergrad, and we'll talk more about this at length, so I'm just going to gloss over it.
Yeah.
But you can get those hours anytime before applying to DPT school.
Yes, and I would recommend do it as early as you can, so you can show colleges that you've been interested since high school, or you've been interested for a long time, rather than just cramming everything in that summer after you
Okay.
graduate.
But the 3+3 program,
Correct.
right? That would probably require you to finish it before you even apply to the 3+3.
Correct.
Right.
So they will have their own requirements. You are correct. The 3+3 program is kind of new, and is used to geared towards for people from high school graduated. It's 3 years of bachelor's program, and you get a guaranteed spot at the DPT program, which is amazing actually. And I did a little research, and we only have 7 colleges who offers that, and most of them are in the northeast part of the state. So yes, it's definitely it's a really good advantage of being those programs, because you do end up graduating very soon, and also you end up getting a spot in a DPT school.
Yeah.
Unlike me, which is a little difficult route, which when you go to a physical bachelor's, and then make sure you have prerequisite courses, and then you apply for a program, and there is no certainty that you will actually get into DPT program.
So, I mean, that's kind of because DPT school, it's not easy becoming a physical therapist.
No, it's not.
Right?
Yeah.
And when I looked into the process, I was like, this is not an easy profession to enter to.
True.
Right? So, I mean, having the 3+3 and not having to deal with the stress of getting
Correct.
into DPT school must be ideal. So, if you know that you from the, well, let me ask you this, and maybe
Sure.
you're not 100% sure of the answer. Once you start the 3+3, what if you're like, nah, I hate this?
Well, that's a great question. So if you're in the middle of it, and at least you have a bachelor degree, you can do something with the bachelor.
I'm guessing you
degrees.
probably just have to top it off with one
Well,
year to get all the credits.
Yeah, so
and
you're
just-
gonna get a bachelor degree. So there is no such thing called bachelor degree in physical therapy.
Yeah.
So even though you are in a 3+3 program, you gotta get a bachelor degree in something else, like bachelor in science, a bachelor in something. But they do make a courses where they're kind of preparing you for the DPT program. So if you decided, after getting 3 years of bachelor degrees, so I don't want to go to DPT schools, you still have a bachelor in something.
Yeah.
So you can use your degree for something else.
Okay. So that's a great segue then. The prerequisite courses.
Correct.
Like you can literally do an arts degree and
Correct.
get into DPT school.
Correct.
But arts undergraduate bachelor's degree.
Correct.
And as long as you have these prerequisites, which are different for each university, but generally are
Very similar.
Yeah.
So we call this just like a pre-medical courses. There is a pre-physical therapy prerequisites, we call it. And it's basically 60 hours, and all colleges will have some difference here and there. 1 or 2 courses will be different, but the core courses usually are same. All the science courses, for example, like in anatomy and physiology with lab, biology 1 and 2, chemistry 1 and 2, physics 1 and 2, psychology 1 and 2. And then you're gonna have biostats, medical terminology, and then some will require some maths and some English, So these are kind of core courses that, which makes you 60 credit hours to have a pre-physical therapy courses. I would definitely recommend, if you know that you like the school or you like certain schools, you look at the prerequisite and make sure you complete those prerequisites before you complete the bachelor degrees. Unlike me, don't be like me. Unlike me, I did my bachelor in biotechnology and genetics, so I was more research rounded. So I had to take extra 4 courses after I graduate. So that's a lot of time, that's a lot of money that I wasted in a sense. After I graduated. So don't be like me and try to prepare beforehand and try to take all these courses before you graduate as part of your bachelor's degree.
Yeah. So don't be like Dr. Ujjwal in university. Be like Dr. Ujjwal after university. Okay? All right. So we get our prereqs, right? So we've shadowed.
Yeah.
We get our prereqs.
Mm-hmm.
And then I know you have to you have to take the GRE,
Correct.
right? And so, when can you take the GRE? And you don't need to take the GRE for the 3+3. You would just have to
No,
take
no,
the
no.
GRE for the undergraduate, then DPT route.
Yeah, the great thing about 3+3, this is a very new. Like, I'll tell you one of the examples is because one of my colleague actually is a product of 3+3, and she graduated by the time she's like 23, 24. Like, compared to me, I graduated in 28-year-old. Like, so there's a lot of time and money you're saving. And yes, I'm like, since you are in the program, you don't need GRE, and there are also schools out there who doesn't require GRE. But if I had to recommend, if you go a traditional route, take GRE. It only gonna help you and bolster your application process. It's a postgraduate program. It's a very intense program, and having a GRE score compared to not having a GRE score, it can make a difference if you're applying for a competitive program and you're trying to up it compared to other people who are applying. So,
well, if you're writing the GRE, you're not in the 3+3 most likely.
Most likely not.
Right. So if you are in an undergraduate program, it's almost like a requirement because like when I looked online, vast majority of schools require it.
Correct.
Right. So
Correct.
I mean, if you're creating a plan, you shouldn't ever plan to not satisfy one of the requirements because it's a competitive environment.
Correct.
Right. Getting into DPT school is not an easy feat. So at the end of the day, to me, if you're planning for something, you ought to at least cover the prerequisites. I would borderline consider writing the GRE a prerequisite.
I would do the same. I would do that definitely. I'm like, I would prepare for the GRE, even though some schools may not require it, but I would definitely I would do it for a competitive advantage.
Okay. All right. So shadow, do your prerequisites in some undergraduate program. Take the GRE. Make sure you have another one is you should have a PTCAS account.
Correct.
Right? So that is Physical Therapy Centralized Application Service, which is, you tell me about it.
Yeah, so this is amazing. When I was a student, and I was trying to applying for a PT school, we didn't have this thing, So PTCAS is Physical Therapy Centralized Application Service through APTA, which is American Physical Therapy Association, and what that is basically it's a service for students that they can apply centrally. So they can have one application, and you pick and choose what college you want to pick in. Not all colleges are part of PTCAS, by the way. Majority are though. So you got to make sure that if your college that you are interested are part of the PTCAS. And once you do that, you just pay a fee, whatever that is, and usually it's $155 for one school, and then another school will be like $60, something like that. It could be different. And then you pick 3 to 6 colleges I would recommend, and do a research beforehand, and you apply one, and you can get it all basically.
And
so it has made the process of application a little more easier.
So if you're in the 3+3, you probably have to do this in high school then.
Correct.
Right, and then those 7 schools are available through the PTCAS.
If they are part of this PTCAS, yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And is there any other use for PTCAS, or is it just the admission
I
program?
think it's more for the application process.
And the making sure you got your hours.
Yeah, so it's a part of the PTCAS is they will have to verify the volunteer hours. So it's easy again going back to if you go back to different schools and you have to apply for different schools, you just do one applications, and a part of the application process is recommendation letters and the volunteer hours. You just put it in one thing.
Okay.
And then you make the whole application process very easy because you're just applying one, and the same application process has been used for all the schools that you're applying for.
Makes sense. That's how it is at least when I was applying for my master's program in law, it was the same thing.
That's really easy. We didn't have this when I was coming out.
Yeah.
But
it does
again,
make life really easy. Yeah. Okay, so you applied. Let's go again. Shadow, prereqs in undergrad.
Correct.
You already have a PTCAS account, and you've submitted all your applications.
Yep.
And it seems like that's not enough because then you need to interview.
Correct. So I will go before that. Let me go one step before. Before you apply for school, any school that you're interested in, you gotta make sure those colleges are accredited. There are some colleges which may not be accredited by
the DPT schools.
DPT schools are accredited, by the state boards, So most of them are, but you don't want to assume,
So in PTCAS, do they have non-accredited PT schools?
I think PTCAS may not. I could be wrong. I do not think so, but I could be wrong. But you just gotta make sure. You just gotta make sure majority are accredited. And usually, what happens if they are not accredited is they are new schools, and they are in accreditation process. So but you just have to make sure that whichever college you're applying are accredited. Just take that out of the list. Make sure it's accredited. And most likely they are, but you gotta make sure.
Do you know like how to find out if they are accredited?
You just go with the state board, and they will tell you they are accredited or they are not.
Oh,
You just
okay,
have to
okay,
ask
okay,
question.
All right.
You know,
Awesome.
and it will be in their website most likely too.
That's a really good nuance to
Yeah,
check.
that's the first thing.
Yeah. I found that that's an issue with lots of professions. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of people that are not accredited.
Yeah,
and
you
they're
don't want to
rendering
guess.
services, yeah.
Most likely it will be, but you don't want to guess.
I mean, yeah, you could pay for an entire degree and then
Yeah.
not get the
Exactly.
All right, that would suck. But all right, I'm guessing there's somebody that's actually gone through the process and they made a video on like this. Maybe I'll find it. But all right, so you get an interview.
Yeah.
And you talked about the interview a little bit at first.
Yeah.
Do you recall your interview and what they discussed during this interview? And how would you tell someone, suppose you had a kid that was shadowing with you, like, and they wanted, they just applied to school and they're all like, hey, I got an interview here. What would you tell them?
Interview is interesting. So basically, I'm like, they're not asking you to become a physical therapist when you're interviewing, right? So it's not they're looking at they're basically looking at who you are, how invested you are in this profession, how invested you are in trying to become a PT, so they're looking for characters, they're looking for personalities, they're looking for are these guys going to be a great ambassador of this profession, is this a good fit, is this a good culture that you're going to get into, so going back to my explanation on doing a shadowing, they will answer all those things. When you shadow a PT in a PT clinic or in hospitals, you get to see a lot. You get to see a lot of diagnoses, you get to see a lot of patients, you get to see a lot of scenarios, and you end up saying knowingly, unknowingly a lot of things that happens in the PT profession, and when you go through interview process, you end up getting all those answers, questions that can be asked, and it talks about your personalities, are you going to be a good fit for the profession or whatnot? You're going to find that out. So it doesn't matter what personality you have, but you'll find out if you really want to become a PT, and and the interview question is going to be basically more easier, when you go through those process, basically.
So it's not very academic.
I don't think so. I'm like,
Maybe it's changed, do you think?
I'm like, obviously, I don't. Interview is more about trying to know who you are, what you want to be, and how you want to be, and they're looking at a lot of characters, I would say, and I do not believe they will ask a bunch of academic questions. I'm like, you have a good GRE, you have a good GPA. I'm like, your scores are telling you who you are. I think they are looking for all those intricate things, that can come out of or when you talk to somebody.
That's crazy. I would think that, just you have to be so invested. This is like a difficult profession to get into.
Correct.
I feel like that's answered, by the fact that you're committing. But hey, it must be a good filtering process, because they're probably like, nah, this guy doesn't fit the bill. So that's cool, because I was utterly shocked.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. When I started looking at the requirements to be a DPT, a DPT, I was like, man, this is like med school.
It's intense.
Right? Obviously, there's not the MCAT, but it's like really, really tough. So you have an interview, and I'm guessing you have it with a few different. You're hoping that you have multiple interviews.
Yeah. So usually, I can only speak of what I had to go through. You end up speaking with the staff, like a professors, you end up and there are some senior students will take an interview, and they will give you their insights, and they will ask a bunch of questions. So it's sometimes it's the layers, And yeah, they're looking at how interested you are and what you know, how much you know about the profession and whatnot. And anything I want you to point out is about choosing a college. Actually, choosing a college is also important thing. And obviously, getting into any DPT program will be great. But if you had a choice, what type of college would you want? You want to look at obviously the locations. You want to look at the money is a big part of it.
Yeah.
There are some state school which are mostly reputed and also cheaper, and then you have a lot of private schools which can be kind of expensive. And again, class size, culture, and there are some schools out there are known for something. It could be very neuro based, some ortho based, some pediatric based. You're gonna learn a lot, very similar on every college you go, but you will learn a little bit more on different colleges you choose to. So there are a lot of nuances that you can find out on different programs out there.
Well, uh, that's a great point. And are your clinical rotations influenced by the specialty that that university carries? Like, for instance, like you mentioned pediatrics, for instance,
Correct.
right? So let's say University A is known for pediatrics. Would
Hmm.
you say that the clinical rotations or the fellowships or any of that, it's more likely that if you're interested in that, you'll end up getting a pediatric fellowship or a clinical rotation?
I would say no. I would say no.
Okay.
And usually what happens is most of the schools will have multiple clinical rotations, at least 3 to 5, and some part times and at least 3 full times. What they would do is they will have all the student go through at least one hospital acute care rotation. So they want everybody to know what hospital rehab is about. And some will require to go 100 miles from where the college is. So they want you to kind of explore a little bit more outside of what the local options are, but you as a student have a choice, for example, as a student, already somebody knows, hey, I want to be a neuro PT, so maybe I want to go a little more of a neuro route, more clinical rotation in a sense, I want to be a sports PT. I want to make sure that I want my last clinical to be in a sports clinic, because I want to get the max out of it, so you do have a little bit of say in a sense, you may not be able to choose where you go, but you can choose which setting you can go, and also sometimes what happens is, like for example, if you take my example, and when I was in school, I was in Dallas, Texas. My wife was in Arlington, Virginia, and I asked my school if I can take all my rotations in Virginia. Which is kind of unheard of, which I did, and I had to basically talk to clinicians and create a contract, by myself. And unfortunately, I was able to, and I could come here, and I had to do different setting. I had to do one hospital rotation in Baylor, but I did all my second, third, and fourth full rotation in Virginia because I knew I was gonna come here and probably start a job here, and also it was easy for me to be with my wife, in a sense. So you do have a lot of options that you can do that. You just have to ask for it, and if it is feasible for the colleges, they can help you with that too.
That's pretty cool. So we went a little off topic. So you shadow,
Yep.
then you get your prerequisite courses
Prerequisite
in an
courses,
undergraduate degree.
yeah.
You write the GRE.
Mm-hmm.
You apply to schools through the PTCAS.
PTCAS,
You do an interview,
correct.
and then you go to DPT school. And what happens in DPT school? How long is it? And tell me a little bit about what I should expect when I'm there, and what other steps we have to take to finally start practicing as a physical therapist.
A great question. DPT, if I have to summarize, I'll tell you one, it's intense. Like any post-professional degree and program will be intense, and if I have to give you a scenario, what's like, you are there in school 8 to 5, all day, Monday to Friday. And if you think weekends are there for you to have fun, weekends are there for to study, So very few people can do part-time jobs, and also go full-time, And when I was going to school, I was a full-time student, and most of us are full-time students. And obviously, there are some people who have to work, and they just make the best out of it, So expect yourself to be in a very intense schooling environment. That's the first, First 2 years of DPT schools are going to be very, very didactic courseworks, I would even say the first semester is going to be the toughest, The reason they make it toughest is because that's where we're going to weed out, the college is going to weed out some of the people who cannot go into PT school. There'll be a lot of dropouts, because they fail, so it's kind of like understood, there are always going to be one or two people who's going to drop out from their first class, so it's not uncommon to have that because it is a tough, after the first 2 years, then you go to more clinicals, and then some courseworks here and there, some research coursework here and there. And the last year is more about clinical rotations. Depending upon which school you go, you have 3 to 5 clinical rotations. Usually you have part-times half a day to part-times once a day for a semester, and then you go about 8 to 10 weeks and sometimes 12 to 14 weeks of full clinical rotations that you go to outside clinics and hospitals and different settings that you want to go.
Okay. So you study a lot. It's very, very demanding. First 2 years is primarily just studying.
Correct.
And so I'm not in the field. I don't know what a clinical rotation,
Correct.
what part-time, any of that means. So can you take me a little bit through what a normal day in clinical rotation looks like?
Yeah, sure. I'll give an example. For example, let's talk about like a second year students. And I do teach a lot, and I have been teaching for a long time, about like 13 years, and I have clinical DPT students coming to me from local university, George Washington University, Marymount University, all the time. And I have created like a residency style module for all the students. Going back to like what to expect from these students and the experiences for part-time students, I'm like they haven't just had a coursework. But they're not expected to do fully, so they are there just to kind of observe things. The second year students, and they learn what physical therapy is in a little clinical setting, a little bit, So they learn more about what happens. You're not expected to do whole evaluations and whole 9 yards. So they are there just to kind of get your feet wet in the water, And that's where the full rotation, now you are expecting to do a little more. You are doing some part of the evaluations. You're definitely co-working with the physical therapist. You co-working and co-creating plan of care. By the time the second or third and last clinical comes to play, you are becoming more independent now. By the time third, you're expected to take a full caseload, and you come up with your own clinical analysis, clinical reasoning, and come up with different diagnoses. When I say different diagnosis, the way I teach is, a diagnosis is something that school of thought brings. What you have. Different school of thought can come up with different diagnosis. So a diagnosis is not a true statement by itself. So
It's
why
not a
you
true what?
true statement by itself? I'll give you an example. So for example, you have a shoulder pain. You have a shoulder pain, and then I did some of the tests, and I come up with, oh, you have bicep tendonitis. So the reason you have bicep tendonitis is because your shoulder flexion was painful, and you have pain at the bicep tendon, and you have difficulty with overhead reaching and lifting. Okay, so that's one school of thought from tissue specific thought, because I tested the tissue and you have bicep tendonitis. Now, if I go to more about my biomechanical school of thought and whatnot, it's like, hey, I test your scapular strength. It was very weak. It was 3+ out of 5. You have a lot of upper trap, hypertonicity. You have a lot of stiffness. I'm going a little more clinical, here. So basically, you have a lot of compensation somewhere else, which put a lot of pressure on the biceps. Now you have bicep issues, but your main issue is coming from somewhere else, which is a lot of biomechanical issues, postural issues, and weakness somewhere else, but your pain is right there, right? Now, I also teach my students FDM, which is basically a fascial distortion model, which is osteopathic school of thought,
What was that?
FDM.
FDM.
It's a fascial distortion model,
Fascial distortion
model,
Okay.
Again, so this will teach you what diagnosis you have, right? So I look at the biceps and I feel like, oh, it's coming from your fascia, because the fascia is everywhere. Fascia is on top of your biceps, Then I based on your description of your pain, based on your analysis of how you describe your pain, I came up with the conclusion that, oh, you have a trigger band, which is, again, I come up with a diagnosis based on the school of thought, right? So these all different school of thought and different diagnoses will help me to lead into what treatment I'm gonna treat you. It's gonna help me with the for the treatments, and then
It's like a diagnosis, but it's like for PTs.
yes, correct. We don't do medical diagnosis,
Yeah.
and even medical diagnosis in the sense like, any diagnosis is based on school of thought,
Yeah.
So I just choose to have different school of thought
Yeah.
rather than just relying on one school of thought.
Do you
I'll give
think that
yeah.
you end up in the same spot?
Well, here's the thing, like, what you have is a symptom. I'll give you another example, okay? So just because you have low back pain, let's talk about low back pain, you have low back pain, okay? I get it. So you have low back pain, right? Low back pain is a symptom, okay? A lot of things can give you same low back pain. I'll give you an example, okay? A disc herniation will give low back pain, Nerve impingement will cause low back pain, You being weak in your core, a lot of muscle spasm causing low back pain, You may have low back pain coming from ligaments. This is all tissues, by the way. Now look at this, okay? Now you have low back pain coming from fascial issue, Now look at this. You have low back pain because you have some hormonal imbalances, okay? You have low back pain because you are glucose intolerance, or you have issues with gluten, You have low back pain because you are lactose intolerance, You have low back pain because you have issues with your kidney, gallbladder, So list goes on. You have low back pain because you have infection. So it's the same low back pain, but the source can come from so many different things. How do you rule in and rule out? And you cannot rule in fully everything because there are still a lot of things that can cause same symptoms. The idea is to be more inclusive, and the idea is to like appreciate, like, hey, there are a lot of things out there which can cause the same symptom. So, and the list goes on basically, and you try to attack it from all different angles, and we'll see what works for the patient,
Wow.
rather than thinking, oh, you have a weak core and you have low back pain, and you have a herniation, you have low back pain. I'm just going to treat that way only. And you might be successful, don't get me wrong, but you won't be successful all the time because there are a lot of other things that could also cause low back pain. What are you doing to improve that part? Are you missing out?
So that was a lot. So I see the DPT part now. So
yes, this is where I think this is where
doctor of physical therapy.
This is where the analysis and clinical reasoning comes to debate. Like, it's just because like, oh, you have a low back pain, a person, I'm just not saying, like, anybody can say, like, so for example, you're doing exercises, right? So you're doing exercises, and I give you the 3 exercises that you're doing. You can get the 3 exercises from YouTube, actually.
Yeah.
A personal trainer can give you your exercise. It's the same exercise that everybody is doing it because they have low back pain.
Yeah.
But how do you come up with what's going on with you?
Yeah.
How do you come up with what tissues are affected?
Yeah.
How do you come up with, like, what is strong, what is weak, what is stiff, what is tight? Like, how do you come up with what biomechanics is being affected? That's a thought process and clinical reasoning that a seasoned clinician and somebody who knows what they're doing can come up with. Now, results and the treatment may be similar, but the clinical reasoning and analysis has to become from a lot of practice.
Yeah. Wow. I can tell you that YouTube and Google has not helped solve any of my problems.
It can help. It can help a lot,
It has
but
for me.
It doesn't help everybody. Let me put it this way. It's there for good reasons, like, but at the same time, like, when it doesn't help, you have to go a little deeper.
All right. So we talked a little bit about DPT school.
Correct.
Right? But you're not a PT yet.
No.
So you finish your DPT school,
Yeah.
2 years didactic, 1 year clinical rotations, and and I'm guessing different schools do it differently, but somehow they cover a relevant portion of didactic and actual practice. And then, so you're done your 3 years, then what? How do you get a license, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Very, very important questions. To have a license, first you have to complete a DPT school. That's a requirement. So or you are in process of completing your DPT school, so that's a requirement. So after you finish the DPT school, you sit for a national exam we call NPTE, which is National Physical Therapy Exam, which is also called board exam or license exam, and you sit for it, and it's governed by FSBPT, which is the Federation of State Board of Physical Therapy, and you sit for national exam, which is you can test it at Prometric Center, and it's given 4 years, I think January, April, July, and October. Back when I did it, I could take any time, but now it's kind of like standardized only in those days, actually, So you have to appear for the license exam, and you got to make sure you pass those license exam, and after you pass the license exam, you are now a licensed physical therapist, and you can practice the way you want to in the state that you want to. So when you go do a license exam, it's basically you can pick which state you want to practice in. And if you want to practice in more than one state, you have to pick and choose those state, and you just have to pay just an extra fee for that state to get a license. Some states requires jurisprudence exam. For example, DC has a jurisprudence exam. So it's just an
What
exam,
exam?
jurisprudence exam.
Oh, okay, okay,
So it's
okay.
basically sometimes it can be open book exam, and it basically tests you about the liberal rules and regulations regarding physical therapy,
Oh, okay.
along with the national licensure exams. There are few state which actually do that. Not all of them though. So once you have licenses, now you're ready to practice in whatever setting you want to practice.
Okay. And are you aware of what the NPTE exam format is?
In what sense?
Like, is it multiple choice?
Yes,
Is
correct,
it,
correct.
and like
So
how
it's
long is it?
so it's going to be in a computerized. It's usually it's 250 questions. It's about 5 hours, and
One day?
it's one day. It's one day. Unlike I think lawyers, you have a couple of days, right? It's a very didactic. It's a very probably one of the toughest exam you have given as a in your physical therapy career, in a sense from schooling. And yes, and you got to make sure you make more than 600 out of 800. And it's a percentile score, and a lot of schooling, a lot of students. Actually, if I have to give you a number, when I was in school, about 85 to 90% will pass the first time.
That's good.
That's very good. And that's one of the criteria actually you could look at which college you want to choose. Because all colleges will boast their numbers, like saying, hey, we have 95% passing rate, we have 100% passing rate, so that will tell you how good the school prepares you to pass for the national board exam.
Do you study a lot for the NPTE right before, like towards the end? Do you feel like school kind of caters their curriculum to help you pass that, or is that like you have to study in addition to, like, for instance, lawyers, right? After we're done, we get a separate course, which is like a Princeton course or Kaplan
Yep.
course or something like that, and that will help you study for the bar exam. And then so it's like, in addition to, a lot of schools do help with preparing for the bar exam, but they're telling you to enroll in that course, and it's like kind of combined and works together.
Correct. Schools teach you so much, and but the exam is exam, So for exam, you have to specifically prepare for the exam. So there are a lot of exam guides out there, a lot of companies out there who helps you to prepare for the exam. So it's not about what you know; it's about what you need to know for exam. Certain type of questions, So there are a lot of courses out there which sometimes schools kind of help you to get into it, So in the last semesters, schools gonna prepare you for those type of exams, and also you take multiple courses and study guides and pre-examinations. There are a lot of mock examinations out there to kind of help and guide you, and so yeah, I'm it's intense, but most people will end up passing.
Okay.
You have to separately prepare, basically what I'm saying. Yeah.
And if you fail, you just write it again, right?
Yes, I think
Not like you just did 6 to 7 years of schools and you can never write it again.
No. It's not like that. And so I think the max amount of retake is, if I'm not wrong, is 6 times. And there are little provisions where if you make a very low score twice, and you won't be able to take, though. But that's very rare or non-existent to some extent, but many people can have that, but usually people will get past on the second try, usually, and but you hope so, but the maximum amount is 6 times, so.
It makes sense. It seems rough, but at the end of the day, school should have prepared you enough to not get those low scores at least.
Yeah.
To fall under the low scores, I'm guessing, is a pretty low percentile. And,
very, very.
So.
And I'll give you an example. They will work with you in a sense, I had a student, back in 2019, a great guy, ex-Marine, and he had issue with the PTSD, and he cannot take testing in a normal testing situation. He had an issue where he had to take a little longer time to process and everything like that. So sometimes they can accommodate you. Like he didn't pass the first time. It's not because he was not smart. He was very smart, very very good student and a great clinician. But not everybody takes taking ability is the same.
Yeah.
So they were able to work on that, and he did pass second time, and now he's doing residency and he's doing great.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, so I mean, it was a long journey here. I feel like it's been 8 years since you made the decision of wanting to become a therapist. And so there's two routes
Mm-hmm.
just to holistically cover everything.
Yep.
Route 1, 3+3,
Yep.
right? You still need your shadowing,
Yeah.
right? You apply to these programs. You probably you do an interview on the front end,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you go. It's just one program, and you do your 3 years of undergrad, 3 years of DPT,
Correct.
and then you write the NPTE, and you're out,
Yep.
right? And then there's the other route, which is a full undergraduate degree. Sorry, no, you shadow,
Mm.
right? Or shadow anytime before DPT.
Correct.
So you need undergraduate prerequisites have to be taken, and what do you call it? After that, you have to apply to DPT school. You have to make sure you have your shadowing. You do the prereqs, and you after the interview, 3 years of DPT school, write the NPTE, and if you pass, you're good.
Yep. Now
Then-
you become a clinician. So after you become a clinician, learning never stops. So you feel like, all right, I'm done with my schooling. And actually, what happens is if you become a healthcare professional, there's always a continuing education process they have to go through, and then state law requires you to have at least 30 credit hours of CEU, we call it, to do it every 2 hours. That's a minimum. That's a
30?
minimum. 30 credit hours. Yeah. So which basically comes down to 2 weekend courses at least. At
Wow.
least, So as a clinician, you're learning all the time. You should learn all the time, because if you want to provide exceptional care, and there's so much out there to learn there,
And it's 30 hours. How frequently?
every 2 years.
Okay, that's not bad.
That's not bad.
Oh,
That's
okay.
minimum.
I thought it was like 30 yearly. I'm like, that's a lot, man. That's like a week of work. Okay. Now, just before we move on,
Yes.
what I heard
Yeah.
is if you want to become a physical therapist, the 3+3 route is awesome because they spoon feed you.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
don't have to think about your prereqs. You don't really have to read a GRE,
You don't have to think about it. Yes,
right?
correct.
And you're just like from the day that you enter to the day you leave, you're there for a dedicated purpose. It's 1 year cheaper as well,
Yeah.
right? And I mean, some people it might even be more because they might
Yeah.
take a victory lap because they haven't got their prereqs,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so it seems like although there's only 7 schools right now as of the date of this podcast,
Yes.
which is what's the date today, man? I've lost track.
February 11?
February 11. Let's go with that. 2024. There are 7 schools right now. And so, but it seems like the better route to go if you want to become a PT.
It's the most convenient, I would say. Most convenient, I would say, because just getting into physical therapy is so difficult nowadays. And you're in high school, and they gotta say, "Hey, you know what? You got into DPT program from high school. You cannot beat that. You cannot beat that. And you getting out 1 year early. You cannot beat that. You're saving so much time and energy and money in that sense.
And I'm guessing it might be 1.5, right? Because if the school is so competitive, the reality is not everyone who's applying got straight A's and B's.
Mhm.
So people are probably taking an extra course or an extra semester just to up their GPA to be competitive.
Of course.
To get into it
The
because
traditional.
yeah.
Route. Yeah.
right? So, I mean, they need more 3+3 programs, it seems, right?
Yeah, this is very recent. I didn't know about it. Example, Lebanon Valley's college down in Pennsylvania is one of them. And that's where one of my colleagues went to. And when I heard about it, I was like, wow, it's amazing. In a sense, it's not traditional way to do that, but when you come out of it, you are a PT, and I would say you don't learn everything as you become PT because it's entry level degree. You become a seasoned clinicians over the years. You learn more over the years. And depending upon how much you want to learn. and how much you want to get into in depth, so once you go into any DPT program, you are entry level PT, and you will learn what you need to know. But if you want to learn more, sky's the limit there.
That is awesome. I think we know everything that we need to about becoming a PT. So you already answered this question. You can only practice in the state that you got your license, but you
Correct.
can actually practice in
Apply.
multiple states.
Correct.
You may have to write a jurisprudence exam.
Depending upon the state, it requires saying, you can have a multiple state license at the same time too.
Okay. I don't know why you would want that. Is there any reason why you would want that?
For example, we live in a DMV area, right? So we have DC, I know we have Virginia, and we have Maryland, and you have a full-time job in Maryland, but you have a part-time per diem job in Virginia. So that requires you to have two state license in a sense, or somebody, for example, you are a travel PT. We can talk about travel PT later on. Travel PTs are.
We can talk about it now.
Yeah, with travel PTs are physical therapists who travels. What that means is they have temporary jobs, and for example, you are in Virginia for like 2 months for your contract, and then you're gonna go to California for like another 2 months of contract. That means you gotta have a license in California to practice. So what happens is they end up going to state at different cities, and if you're in a different state, you gotta have a license to practice in that state.
Is there a particular like industry in which you find travel PTs, like maybe military, because they want to go base to base and help or something?
Yeah, that too, or and just a regular. The way travel PT works is and I'll give you a scenario, an example. So if you are a private practice, it could be anything. It could be hospitals too. So for example, you're a female therapist and they go to maternity leave. And then you are not there for some reason because you are sick or whatever that is, and then that particular place or setting needs that PT for that 3 months, So then that's where they got this contract PT to come in and fill in, So that's where the travel PT comes to play, So they get paid a lot because they are there for a certain amount of time, and there is no obligations to make them a full-time employee. And so it's a win-win situation for both. You have to, so as a setting, they have to pay more, and as a PT, you're gonna get more, but at the same time, you're gonna have to stay there for a long time because it's only a contract job.
Do you find that some PTs want an extension after travel PTs? Have you ever had an experience with a travel PT in your clinic?
I have not ever done travel PTs. I have my students who are now clinicians are doing travel PTs. It's a very lucrative career, and again, most of them who does that who loves travels. Most of them who does it want to make a little more money, because they are in student debt. We'll talk about debt later on too. So I think you really need to like that setting, because you're going a lot of unknown territory. For example, you want to have a full-time job. You're going to come to the job. You're going to look at if that's the right spot for you. You really like the environment, whatnot. And travel PT is a little different. You do have a little say where you want to go, but at the same time, you're going there for a couple of months, maybe 3 months at most, and you kind of be thrown into water, and you have to do all the things that unexpected sometimes, and sometimes they will just give you all the evaluations. It's a little tough because you are getting paid more too. They will make sure they'll work you more. It's not true all the time. Saying that, I'm it's unknown territory. Let me put it this way, to some extent.
Makes sense.
But
New environment
new environment.
Every 3 months. You have to kind of warm up to the
Exactly.
practice owner, and
then
this and
there's
that.
no time to make a relationship with the peers and stuff like that, because and patient population too. You just have to go from the first day, and there's no guarantee that you're going to spend a lot of time with the patients too, or the peers. So it's a very fast pace, and you need to have certain personalities, and you also need to really accept that you're there for a reason. So it's not a permanent, temporary.
So we might as well talk about it now.
Yeah.
You brought it up, the debt and salary,
Correct. Yeah.
right? So I'm guessing that you incur a lot of debt to become a
PT.
So the undergraduate program
Yeah.
I'm guessing it's the same as, biology or
Yeah,
whatever,
yeah.
life science, kinesiology, whatever you go into. So that's an undergraduate program. But is DPT school very expensive?
I'll give you an example. Let's take an example. I was just crunching out some numbers, and I'll give an example. VCU is a state school, and is one of the reputed school for physical therapy program. The 3-year program costs $70,000, which is not much comparatively. Marymount in is same state, and it's in Arlington, Virginia. It cost at least 130K just for tuition, for 3 years. It's a private school though, So you're looking at about 50 to 60,000 difference just from tuition.
So 1 second, you said $70,000. But
VCU.
did that's just the tuition cost?
That's a tuition cost.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. You specifically distinguished
Yes.
in the other one, so I thought
Yes.
maybe
Now,
that
if
was
you look,
something else.
now in the grand scheme of thing, like if you look at 3 years of professor schools, most likely you're not working, with the room and board, all the expenses, and it's not uncommon to come out of the PT school postgraduate program at least 150 or more than 200K in debt, at least.
Oh
At
my
least.
goodness.
I knew a lot of my fellow clinicians and peers coming out of that debt, and this is I'm talking about. I'm not talking about bachelors, So it's not uncommon,
Just the DPT.
just a TPD program,
Oh my goodness.
So that's where I was talking about earlier. When you choose your college, one of the criteria you gotta look at is the cost, because there are some colleges which cost really less. Most of them college that cost less are state school. And most of the college that costs a lot is a private school, and the state schools also have great programs. And I'm not saying there's no bash on the professional program. Sorry, the
Private schools.
private schools, but if I was you, then I would definitely go in a state school, try to get my DPT degree with less money. But yeah, I'm if you can get in any DPT program, it's good for you.
Okay, now that statement has a lot of weight.
Mm.
Okay, so state school 70, and then I'm undergrad. If you're at state level, each year is quite a bit as well.
Mhm.
So I mean, regardless, you're walking out with 20, 40, 60, 80 plus 70, about 150, right?
Yeah, it's a head scratching numbers.
But so if you're going through the state program, it's probably 150 by the time you're done everything. And if you're going through the private program,
At least 200K. Yeah.
okay, that's a lot of money. Now, okay, so now let's talk how you pay that off,
Yeah.
right? So the median salary I found was 97,000, right?
Yeah, I'm I think salary is something that I think it depends on where you work and how you work. So there are different settings which pays more. A different setting pays less. I'll give an example. Travel PTs makes more money.
By more, what do you mean?
How much? I think travel PTs makes at least more than 110, 120K. And if you are full-time travel PTs out there, home health PTs makes a little more. Hospital setting PTs makes a little more. When I say makes more, I think average will be at least 90 plus, depending upon how experienced you are and everything like that. Outpatient makes a little less, but at the same time, if you depending upon which setting you are in, you can make more if you can make more out of it. You have to become more than just a practicing clinician. Some take a lot of leadership roles. And the good thing about the PT profession is we have a lot of autonomy also. We have direct access. That's something we can talk about right now. Direct access, it means we can see a patient from the street. It's almost like a primary care. Patient can come to us and don't have to worry about the referral from physicians. And I think all 50 states has some form of direct access. So what this lists to us is you can have your own practice. Which I did, So that can create more income, You can be a one clinician, like a practice too, which can make more money out of it too, So there's a lot of different ways, I would say the average income, if I have to look at the numbers, I would say is probably 90 plus, And I think the least and is starting probably will be 70, 75 plus above. Again, it depends on where you're working, And if you want to make more money, bring the value. Bring the value to your team. Bring the value on your patients. Bring the value on the offices where you're working at. Be more than just a clinician. And if you do that, most likely you're gonna make money. You should make more money out of it. And down the road, if you wanna create your own practice, you should do it. Because you can.
So when I was reading up on the profession, it was funny because the undergraduate degree that you choose didn't matter so long as you get
Correct.
the prerequisites, but the recommended ones,
Mm-hmm.
business fell in there,
Mm-hmm.
right? And business was recommended, and I'm guessing this is why it was recommended,
Mm-hmm.
right? That once you actually get the core competency of becoming a good physical therapist, you can expand on your income by starting your own business and
Correct.
knowing how to maximize that. So when we say the salary, the median salary is it's about $100,000, 97 something it was
Mm-hmm.
saying, and if you start your own business, sky's the limit with respect to where you
Yes.
go, right?
Yes. I mean,
And that's
definitely.
where the value comes, the experience, how much you put yourself out there, leadership, all that stuff, right?
Correct. Correct.
Yeah, but you need to be good at your job in order to do that. Like, for instance, a lot of the things that attract you, you are somehow the best physical therapist in a particular area. And so you need to take some, active role and put yourself out there and
Very,
bring value.
very. I'm like, obviously, like, and if I have to say, the elephant in the room is definitely a reimbursement. So most of the physical therapists work in a clinic or in hospitals and any settings that take insurances. And most, not all of them, most. So since we take insurances for our service, and the reimbursements has not changed much since last 10, 14 years. The reason I know this is because I have a business, and so it's become very difficult for businesses to operate when reimbursements are not increased. When everything increases, your if you look at the business, I'm like, you expect to pay more salary, our economy increases by at least 3%, which is have been more lately, So these are all the factors where really affects the clinician pay, and to make the matter worse, the Medicare just came up with 8% cut just like a few years ago, which really impacted
8% what?
8% cut on rehab reimbursement. So if it was $100, they went $92, and so that really impact a lot with the reimbursement, But at the same time, instead of thinking a negative, you can really make the most out of it, But that is one of the thing negative I would say about my profession. I love my professions. We do such a great things with our patient populations in some different way. But if I have to say one thing, we are paid way less than our counterparts with a doctor level education.
Yeah.
And we have so much things we do in a high level, and so the pay is definitely a little less comparatively. However, instead of complaining that, you can make more money, and you should make more money. You just have to own it, and you just have to create a value for yourself, and you can go from there.
Mm, that was cool. The American PTA has to fight more too, though, right? I mean,
Yes, I'm like, and don't get me wrong, they have been working really hard, and I've been an APTA member since day one. From a student, I'm still are. I'm a BPTA, which is the Virginia Physical Therapy Association member too. I support my professional association, in a sense. They have worked really hard to make our profession where it is right now, and since last I think 15 years we have a direct access, and with the direct access, I think what it came was the autonomy of our professions. If you look at it in the past, the public awareness and even medical society awareness of what PT was, hot pack, cold pack, ultrasound, stretching exercises, um, this were the norms of what physical therapy was. I mean, things have changed. It has become, because of direct access, we are seeing patients. We have become a primary care for musculoskeletal issues, and that's what I do sometimes. I see patients firsthand. You have an injury, you come to me first, and I have to make a decisions. You're gonna be in a rehab, or should I send it to you? Get an x-ray, or should I send it to get some injections, and maybe you may need a surgery, so these are a lot of things that we are making decisions, and we have training to do that, all those things, and I would say APTA has done a great job of creating our profession to a little higher level, and go hand in hand to any clinicians, obviously I cannot compare to surgeon. They're good at surgery, but with the rehab we are the expert, So and everybody has their own niche, so we are not far behind compared to any healthcare professionals at the doctor level.
That's interesting. I do think you guys should get paid more. Or somebody needs to bring the cost of education down.
Yes,
Right? It's like
and
one or the other because
that's the dilemma, and then let's talk about that actually, and then I think our organizations and association definitely need to do a little better job of or working on getting the reimbursement up, and I think they definitely need to do that. And this is one of the biggest region in our profession. Let's talk about residency and fellowship, as we're gonna go in that route. Our
1 second.
yes, go ahead.
Residency and fellowship starts when?
Yes,
After?
you have to be a physical therapist first. You have to be a licensed physical therapist first. You have to be a practicing physical therapist first. Because the residency and fellowship is a post-professional studies. So just like in the MD program, you have to do a mandatory residency for 3 years and a fellowship for 2-3 years, right? And then you become a specialist and whatnot. You can go through that route. In a physical therapy profession, we do have that too. We do have residency. We do have fellowship. I did residency. I went through my second doctorate. It took me about 3 years. I even did board specialty in sports. It took me 1 year. So I did all those things. And anybody can do that too. But in our physical therapy professions, it's not mandatory. It's a good thing and it's not a bad thing. It's a bad thing. Let me put it this way. Let me explain in a sense. As a clinician, I want all of my fellow peers as a physical therapist want to be the best, because residency and fellowships are very, very intricate and very, very extensive programs who's going to put you in situations, and we're going to learn a lot more to become exceptional clinicians, and which will help with our patient care. Which will help with the success of your treatments, and which will definitely distance you from somebody who is not, But the reason a lot of people don't do residency and fellowship is because of you already went to so much schooling, you already paid a lot of money, you already have so much debt, and the extra residency, which takes about at least 1 year and 1.5, it's going to cost a lot of money. It's going to cost a lot of your time, and there's no guarantee that you end up making more money also. So these are all reasons why a lot of PTs don't go for residency and fellowship, so which is kind of like sad for our profession in a sense, but at the same time, if we could get paid more, like compared to other counterparts, we should do more fellowship and residency. So our standard of care will be high, and our treatment success can be much more higher, and we owe to our patients and we owe to our profession in a sense,
Do you think that the reason why the pay isn't where it is because everything is not essential? Like, for instance, if you go to a doctor, typically, if uncured, there's a chance this person may die, right? Whereas if you come to a PT, people are typically complaining and we're trying to maximize their life. Like, what is it? Because technically speaking, I would think that there should be a huge demand for PT because we live in a time right now where we have these very static jobs and we're always stuck or we're hunched over computers and we're standing or we're in these positions that don't allow the body mobility, just general mobility. And as a result, our bodies are becoming more stiff. We're getting more aches and pains than we probably ever did before. And so shouldn't you be higher in demand right now? Because
yes, I'm I give you 2-part answer to that. So I'm everybody needs physical therapy, and and physical therapy is in demand and will be in the more demand. But if you look at our society and our medical healthcare status and healthcare is we are not into preventions. You're only gonna need healthcare. You're only gonna use healthcare after you have something.
yeah,
So when that happens, it's one is too late. And for insurances, I think they don't think physical therapy from that standpoint. So for example, if you go to physicians, it's you're really sick, and then I think they are more high priority, and if you're physical therapy and you're looking for more functions and you want to just working on your bending down or walking, for them it's not as important. It's more of it's a function, but comparatively, you're gonna die, like you said, and compared to you just want to move, they're not looking at those things. However, in the grand scheme of things, if you look at it, if you focus on so much of rehab and prehab, if you focus on preventions, you're costing so much of healthcare cost in the long run. And physical therapies allow you to do that, but it has not worked that way. I would love if they worked that way, where we are considered most of our primary, but we are not right now. So everybody comes to see us. Healthcare is on the back end from rehab standpoint.
Prevention's always been, well, I mean, if you think from a government perspective, it makes sense,
Yeah.
right? Like, I mean, they can't, there's always limited funds.
Correct,
And
correct. It all comes down to the money, and the reimbursement for our professions, and going back to that talk now, I think I would say, this is why a lot of offices, a lot of clinics are going out of pocket and cash pay options. They are dropping some of the insurances because it costs so much money that they actually lose money when they see a patient. So and that's true, because I know I'm in a business. So there are some clinics, some insurances pay so less that when you see a patient, you're actually losing money, because when you see a patient, you have to make certain amount of money so the business runs, right? And there are insurance out there just pays so less that seeing a patient, actually you losing the money. And this has led into a lot of clinics out there to get out of pocket and cash options. There are a lot of concierge PT has come in, rightfully so, to become a cash option and out of pocket network. I only feel bad for the patients, because when they have an insurance, they won't be able to use the insurance in a sense, and but that's where I think it's going into, unless something happens. And that's a win-win situation for both clinicians and the clinics and the patients. It might go in other directions.
wow.
This is a whole separate talk, though.
Yeah, that's it's interesting though. I mean, but that's access to care, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So I mean, that sucks. I didn't realize all those other,
Variables.
hurdles.
Yeah.
And because I mean, when you enter a profession and it's difficult, you're hoping for a fact that there's a great reward at the end,
Correct.
right? And it seems like you always need to be on the ball in this profession,
Mhm.
right? I mean, at some point it'll pay off,
Mhm.
but I'm guessing the first 5 years are kind of tough.
Yes, I'm in the first 5 years, you're figuring out and who you are, as a professional, a PT, what you want to do, you're constantly learning. Learning never stops, actually, and entry level PT can make you a PT to treat as a physical therapist. But that's what we call clinical practice. The definition of clinical practice is you're learning from every patient. Every patient is a case study for you. So you're learning as you go, and you're gonna learn from all different avenues to make your clinical practice better too. So for the first 5 years, obviously, you're learning through who you are, what you want to be, and what niche you want to create. If you want to create that niche, from money wise too, you're developing that platform, you possibly get into more leadership, and I won't say it's a tough, but it's definitely a defining moment first 5 years, and then it goes from there.
All right, all right. Well, let's not get too much into the bureaucratic. Back to the profession.
Yeah, let's go back.
What's an average normal day like for a physical therapist? Take me through. You get to
Sure.
let's not take yours, because you're the owner of a clinic.
I'll talk about me being a clinician too. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about some of the people that maybe you employ.
Yeah.
And what does a day look like for them?
Sure. I'm a very active clinician, by the way.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I saw you, so I know.
well, let me tell you. I think it depends, where you work at and what setting you work at. I'll give you a scenario. If you're in a hospital setting, like acute care setting, inpatient setting, what that means is patients are boarded in the hospital bed. So in that scenario, a PT would go from room to room. Different floors, different specialty, trying to treat the patients. You walk a lot, and you help patients with the bed mobility. You hit patients with the movement, walking. It seems like not a whole lot, but it's just a lot of important things you're doing at that level. And so if you look at from long-term care standpoint, which is basically patients are in the hospital, but they're not as acute, so they would, instead of you going to their rooms, patient would come to rehab department, and they have their schedules, and then you treat the patients accordingly, and you have 8 to 4 9 to 5 jobs, and then in this scenario, like ourselves, we're outpatient sports, so people will have a schedule. They would come in on their own schedule, on set schedule, and they will have 45 minutes to 1 hour of treatment time, where we look at the patients. We do a lot of didactic history taking, examinations, we come with a diagnosis and treatment, a lot of different kinds of treatments, compared to from exercise prescriptions, to manual therapy, to a lot of education on what to do, what not to do,
Did you say you can prescribe to?
So when you say prescribe, let's talk about that actually. So for physical therapy, we prescribe exercises as a medication. So we call it movement as medicine. Just like for physicians, they prescribe medication. We prescribe exercises. It's a doses exercises. So what that means is you can see the same exercises. For example, you see somebody doing a bridging. The question is how do you dose that bridging? Do you want to do it for tissue repair? Do you want to do it for vascularization? Do you want to do it for strength? Do you want to do it for endurance? Do you want to do it for power? We can create the same exercises in things that we want, and we're going to dose it as appropriately. So that takes a lot of clinical reasoning. So that's what we do as physical therapists, and we dose in exercises for what your needs are.
Okay.
That's what I meant by exercise dosing.
When I heard that, I just thought, gotta clarify. You're a doctor. Maybe you could prescribe stuff as well. Not sure.
Yeah, physical therapists definitely cannot prescribe medications. We can educate patients on medication, but we can prescribe medications. There are maybe some, maybe in the military, I think it's going on. Possibly, military does have more autonomy. Actually, sometimes the military can prescribe an imaging. There are a couple of states out there which can prescribe some imaging, like X-rays and MRIs. I think Oregon being one of them. And but I think it's growing. The field of physical therapy is growing into. We can do a little more as the healthcare cost is going up. I think what's happening now is physical therapy is also one of the professions where they're doing a little more now. Just like I said, I sometimes I act like a primary care for musculoskeletal issues. People come in the first thing they have injury. I have seen people on the day of the injury. Just like a month ago, I saw somebody in the gym who had knee dislocation, and I had to put the patella back in. I've seen patients, usually a lot of my former patients, they already know me, it's hey, I got a really bad injury. Can you help me? Now I have a marathon to run this weekend. Can I see you? Stuff like that. I'm seeing them so I can see, can you go back and do what you want to do? Or you have to kind of stop right now. We got to work on the rehab. Sometimes people just come in just to check on themselves so that they know what they need to know, and they can either continue or they have to be in a rehab. So I do a lot of those things too, from almost like a primary care standpoint.
Wow.
Where was I forgot.
We were talking about, we had too many segues, but we were talking about what you do on a day-to-day.
Got you. I'm so sorry. Okay, yeah. No, that's outpatient. I was talking about that, which is ours, Yeah. And so in hospital, you go to different rooms, in a long term, you go to the rehab department, and from the hospital, and then to an outpatient, you actually go to the clinics, and there's another one is a concierge or home health PT, So home health PTs are actually done for older generations or older people or patients who cannot come to clinics for all the said reasons, So home health PT can come to your home and provide a PT. Now, there's another more recent, I would say, is concierge PT, or we call it mobile PT, And this this type of setting is basically is out of pocket. They'll come to your home. They'll come to your office. They'll come to wherever you want to come. You want to do it, and perform physical therapy services and at your convenience, And there are a lot of
is that like personal training?
No, it's still a physical therapy, but but they're not using insurance because it costs a lot to come to your convenience. Like, you cannot charge what you charge in the clinic, and you come to my house, and it's gonna cost a lot of time to go there and provide services and have to drive and whole 9 yards. Like, so most of the concierge and the mobile PTs are out of pocket, and you still provide physical therapy though,
Okay.
unless you want to provide personal training, which a lot of physical therapists can provide personal training because they already know everything, and they do kind of like, almost like part diem personal training. Like, a lot of people make a lot of money being personal trainers because they have high incline, they can pay it, like, and you make a lot of money out of it. Actually, that's true.
Okay.
That's another option.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking. Okay, where would you say the majority of PTs practice? What's the most popular industry? Is it clinic, such as yourself, sport? Because when I think of a physical therapist, I think sports, injuries, stuff like that. But that's relevant to me,
Mhm.
right? Somebody else might think something else. But where do you think you find vast majority of PTs practice?
I think if you look at it, let's talk about physical therapists from gender standpoint, like, and most of the PTs are females, and
Really?
I would say from comparatively, like, and recently most PTs are coming out to be males, like, and most females. I'm not generalizing it, but if I have to give you kind of from average standpoint, most females end up working in hospital settings, pediatric settings. It doesn't mean males are not there. You will see more males are working in sports, orthopedic settings. And so you'll see from that standpoint, like, So I would say a lot of PTs are in probably more hospitals. And definitely on more private practices too. The trend we are going in with the physical professions, especially with male or female, but mostly males, recently are into getting into more of the own their private practices. From opening in CrossFit gyms, opening in any kind of like sports gyms, like, and even telehealth. The people have become coaches, and they are practicing PT / personal training, like combo thing through telehealth, through online.
Wow.
And it's been a thing now, like, and it's very trendy, and they're helping people. Yeah,
Cool.
whatever their needs are.
Okay, so we covered what they're doing roughly. I'm guessing in hospital it makes sense. Patient comes, you probably already have like a chart on what their problem is, and then
Correct.
you're helping them
Mm.
get to a particular goal. In clinical practice, would you say vast majority of the day is just seeing clients, or are there other things that you do as well at work?
Yeah, I'm like, as a clinician, like, definitely the vast majority of time is spent on patient care. But like any other healthcare professional in America, we spend a lot of time charting. So documentation is a big thing. And if you're not smart with the time management, it can be very daunting. Like, what I'm trying to say is documentation. Luckily, we don't have any more should I say, most places don't have any more paper charting anymore. So we have a lot of AMR, which is electronic medical records. And most of the electronic medical records are software. Have a lot of smart text, like, almost like AI, like, as it has slowly kind of increasing on the in our field too. So which has made the documents a little easier. And so a lot of people spend time documenting it. And sometimes you end up writing letters to insurance, for continued rehab. Sometimes you writing letters and emails to other professionals like surgeons and physicians and different people, like, whoever the needs are, like, and this is a usual job that for just as clinicians. Then, some clinicians are leaders too, like, they are managers, they are CEOs. Then they wear a lot of hats, like, they do a lot of staffing and working on the scheduling, like, working on the marketing. And the social media is kind of like a big thing now, where you have to do something. But at the same time, like, you got to look at it, if you are a clinician and if you want to grow, you have to, or you need to, or you should do more than just clinical care, so we can continue to grow professionally. So these are the some of the things that physical therapists would do besides clinical care.
Okay. Okay. Is it also a trend that all physical therapists have really bad writing, like doctors? Is it chicken scratch?
Well, my handwriting has been getting worse, and you'd be surprised. I won a handwriting contest when I was a kid, so I don't know about that, but what happens is, I think we focus so much on time management that we end up writing fast,
Yeah.
rather than.
I mean, barely writing. I feel like doctors don't even write. I've read their, so I'm very grateful. I mean, I wish when I was in practice, it was more EMR,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it was brutal. I was like, what is this? Chicken scratch,
I know, I know,
right?
I know.
I can't read it. So
Luckily, we have computers now.
yeah, thank God. But okay. Um, I like to ask for each profession,
Yeah,
what are some of the characteristics that you think would excel in this field,
yeah.
and what are some characteristics that would really suffer in this field?
That's a great question. And if I have to think about it, what kind of characteristic, I think the way I want to say this is because, not because, I think anybody can become physical therapist,
Who
but
can be a good physical
yeah, there you go.
therapist, though?
I think I was going to answer that. Anybody can become a physical therapist, but the question lies into, do you want to become a physical therapist, And you got to understand what a physical therapist does first. We work with a lot of patients who have physical issues, medical issues. There's a lot of clinical reasoning that goes into play, There's a lot of coaching that goes into play. There's a lot of psychology that goes into play. People have issues, and you have to do multitask, there's a lot of stress that goes into play too. Can you handle that? Do you have empathy? That somebody who is in pain, somebody who has a lot of issues, can you calm that down? And do you have those traits? Do you want to learn? You will get to continue to learn in the healthcare fields. Any fields, I'd say, you got to constantly learn. You're going to constantly do everything that you can to improve the patient care, so that your outcomes are better, So, do you have what it takes to become a physical therapist? If you have those things, it doesn't matter what kind of personality you have. I'll give an example. I myself, I'm very reserved, and what's the word I use?
Introvert.
Introvert type of person. Most of the physical therapists are not introvert person. Because you have to constantly talk. I'm talking right now. And you have to constantly meet new people, new patients. You gotta engage. You have to create a value by teaching them, by showing them, and as an introvert, it was very difficult for me to be able to do all these things. But I did it because I love helping people. So it went against my personality, but I think my will was bigger than who I am. So I think the most important trait is, I think all healthcare professionals goes into field with idea of helping people, and if you have that, doesn't matter you're introvert, you're extrovert, whatever characters you have, you can do it, but yeah, it helps you if you're already somebody who is easy to talk to, if it's easy we can communicate to, because these are all the traits you have to have, because you're working with people all the time.
So you need to be able to interact with humans.
Correct.
All right.
All the time.
You need to be able to communicate.
Very well.
You need to have empathy.
Very important.
Okay.
We have to get the trust. If you don't have the trust, doesn't matter how good of a clinician you are from inside and outside. If the patient doesn't buy in, it's not gonna work. Most likely.
Okay. So you've been in the practice for 15 years now.
Correct.
Right? I'm sure you've seen people that struggle.
Correct.
Right? Who are those people?
A great question. Again, going back to, I think, people who struggles, I would say, are, it's a great question. I'm giving an example in both ways, I always like to say that. Somebody who is a perfectionist, So these people are going to be great clinicians, but at the same time, they're going to spend so much time in documentations that they're going to bore themselves out. I knew a lot of people, actually, who spend so much time and energy in documenting because they feel like the documentations is not good enough. They're spending 2-3 hours every day documenting. They spend documenting during lunchtime. They would even come during the weekend doing documentation. Because they feel like they have to be the best documenter. you know you're not getting paid for best documentation. You are getting paid for skill documentation. It doesn't have to be. That's why I created MSR anatomy and documentation that I teach to my students, actually. How to be succinct, how to give you skill document, what are the ingredients out there that you need to document, rather than writing a whole book.
What did you start?
Is MSR anatomy of documentation. It's my I just created something where how to document better.
Okay.
That
Like
I
your
teach my students.
methodology.
My methodology of how to document.
Okay. All right.
I'm creating a book. Hopefully, I can publish someday soon.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well, you can come back and talk about it.
that will be another story. Yeah.
Okay. So we figured out the characteristics that you need, and so being a perfectionist
Mhm.
is not good for this.
It's good and bad. And
It-
good that you might continue to learn to become a good therapist, but it might be bad because you might not be great with the time management.
Yeah, and you'll drive yourself, because if you look at the totality,
Exactly.
right, every single day that adds like another hour or two, and then before you know it, you're going to be complaining about work-life balance,
Exactly,
and hating
exactly.
life, and then you're going to drive yourself out.
Exactly, and burnout is real. Mental health is real.
Yeah.
So going back to you could be really good at what you do, but if you're not controlling from that standpoint, from time management standpoint, and you're really getting good at something, but you are burning yourself out from something else, and it's gonna affect your professional life,
Of course.
and eventually it's gonna affect your personal life, and then it's gonna affect your work and your outcomes. So indirectly it's gonna affect everything.
So do you feel like there's work-life balance in the life of a PT?
Actually,
How much do you guys work?
how much do I work? I work 40
Not you,
hours.
not
Okay,
you.
okay, okay.
I want to
general-
talk about somebody that's entering the profession.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. And a general PT would work 40 hours.
Okay.
Some works 5 days. Actually, most work 5 days, and you have so much flexibility in these professions. That somebody works as 4 days, 10 hours. You don't actually have to work more than 40 hours because you have a decent earning. But if you have an option of making more money, and if you want to make more hours, but you don't have to work more than 40 hours. And good thing about our profession is we don't have weird hours like other profession has. We don't have to work at nights. We don't have to work. Most is maybe 7 o'clock to maybe 7 p.m. at most. Some works 8 to 5 depending upon where they work at. Some works weekends because they want to, they need to. Not because they have to.
Do you get paid more on the weekends?
Of course, I'm depending upon which facility you work at. A lot of people have full-time jobs and they work on the weekends to make more money out of it. They go to home health.
Pay
they
off their student debt.
yeah, that exactly. And but these are options. So you don't have to. You're making decent living, but there's always more jobs.
So while we're talking about this, it just popped in my head. Do PTs make 90,000 coming out?
No.
So how,
Most likely, again, it depends. It depends which of settings you're going into. Like in home health, maybe a little bit. If you go to travel PT, yes, But on most entry-level jobs, you make about maybe more than 75, 70.
Okay.
And if you go to like really other states, they're making like less than that actually. But if I have to give and take, 75, 80 will be kind of like a healthy start to go into.
Okay, that's reasonable at least. So,
Yeah,
you
and
can
then
pay all your bills. And,
yeah, and then what happens usually is that most also clinics and hospitals, they also have some form of a sign-in bonuses they usually get, from 8,000, 5,000 to 20,000, whatever that is, But you get this is usually a contract associated with that. You have to work for a couple of years, whatever that is, So you get more money, you get more amount of work. You have to get a contract for, Talking about loan, there is also I think it's a federal, public loan forgiveness program out there, which basically requires your employer to be either federal government or non-profit organization, and you gotta meet about 120 payments, and then all the loan are taken care of. So
120 payments is 10 years.
10 years. I think what I was told was you just pay minimum pay, and if your employers falls into that category, they will take care of the loan forgiveness.
Okay.
So you do have options like that, and talking about that thing is the best thing you can do is if you're really good and you want to do more and you really want to be an entrepreneur, you can make your own practice, if you're thinking about that, you do have that freedom and flexibility of our professions, so you can do that if you want to.
Yeah. But you have to be good at it. I mean, nobody's gonna come to a PT with 2 years of experience and be like, "Hey, I started my own practice."
No, actually, we don't. And looking back now, when I started, we were not even thought about this. There
Okay.
was no such platform out there to have your own practice, because we are taught to work in hospitals or in a private setting most of the times. We're not taught business sense. We're not entrepreneurship and stuff like that. That's not where we're taught in school. And looking back, when I started, I had to learn all the hard ways. I had to do a lot of trial and errors I had to go through to be where I am right now. And I had to work as a manager for a couple of years to learn more about inside and outside of PT, to learn about those things, and that really helped me to kind of be where I am right now. But right now, we have a lot of leaders out there, a lot of coaches out there who can teach you if you want to do it sooner than later.
Where are these coaches?
They're everywhere out there. It's a lot of, you can find in social media out there. So there's a lot of them, from if you want to do a CAS practice to insurance-based practice. Name it. There are a lot of avenues out there, a lot of companies out there teaching you, coaching you on how to do this. So, which we didn't had when I was practicing. I had to learn all the hard way.
Okay. So let's go back to work-life balance and stress and all
Correct.
that.
Yeah.
So you said they work about 40 hours,
You work 40 hours,
but
4
that
days or 5
is
days.
subject to documentation, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So I remember I was talking to Dr. Murphy,
Yes.
and she was telling me that they have a similar lifestyle,
Correct.
that they're required to work
Mm.
during regular hours, but some of them, their documentation takes them ages,
Correct.
right? So is that similar? Or I'm guessing there's a little bit less documentation here. But how much would you say on average somebody that starts off is working and
I'm
within 5 years?
Yeah, new clinicians may require a little more time for documentation because obviously they're learning. They're spending more time in the clinical care where they're not being as efficient with the documentations or during the clinical care. And some people have a personality where they don't want to document while doing clinical care. Where I feel you just have to be very efficient with time management, and you can do it, and still be really exceptional with the clinical care at the same time, So this is something that I teach actually to my fellow employees, my students all the time. Where how can you manage the time? Going back to our normal clinicians, yes, they spend a good amount, at least about 1 hour a day in documentation, and they will some do it after work, and most do it during the work, So I think it only gets better with more time, and they will figure it out, and the person who doesn't figure it out is the one who's going to get burned out.
Okay. So you work on average, I would say 45 hours then.
If you want to take that into considerations,
Well, I
most
do.
yeah.
I want to take into consideration how much of my
True.
life do I expend towards working?
Yes, if you starting out, I would give at least 1 hour for documentation. Yes, and
Okay.
that's gonna speed up as you become more efficient and proficient. Yeah.
And if you enroll and learn Dr. Ujjwal's methodology on how to document.
Well, I teach it when the patient leaves, you're done with the documentation, and you're being skilled with what you're doing on that time, and your documentation is also being very skilled. So the quality doesn't get compromised at all.
Mm.
Yes.
And how do you teach this, by the way? Is this just for your employees?
For right now, yes, and it's basically what it is I always give this analogy to my students, you want to be a chef, you don't want to be a cook. What that means is no disrespect to cooks. Cooks the food because they have a recipe.
Yeah.
Chef, they understand the ingredients. So once you have an ingredient, you can make whatever you want, and however you want. So what I'm trying to say is once you know the intricacy of the ingredients that goes into documentations, everything is fill in the blanks. I'll give an example. If you're coming as a patient, and I'm going to spend time with you talking about my history portion, And this is not the first time, because the first time it takes a little longer. You're a follow-up patient. I already saw you last time. This is the second visit, right? So how much time should I spend talking to you during my history taking? And some people just like to just talk. Let me be very succinct. I'm gonna ask 3 questions to you. Okay, I'll ask you, how are you feeling right now? How are you feeling these days? Okay, are you doing a home exercise program? Okay, those 3 questions will give me all the answers I need for my subjective portion of my documentations. Now you can keep talking, and now you can tell me everything about your life. That only is a bonus things that I need from you. You see what I'm saying? So I'm being very straight, about what I want, right? Now it doesn't mean you have to be just that, but that's the ingredients I'm talking about. You still need to build a rapport. You still need to create a trust. In a lot of different ways.
That's where my head was going.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like I want to know what the weather's like.
Exactly, and you can talk all those things while I'm treating you. But for the subject portion of it, I can get it sooner, so I'm done with my documentation of the subjective portion. Then objective portion comes in. I do certain tests based on whatever you going on, based on my evaluation. I don't have to spend half an hour just to examine you a second time, because I want to focus more on treatments now.
Yeah.
So I have all these ingredients I say that you need, that goes in each category. So once you already have that ingredients, you just have to find out what goes into that ingredients, and you fill in. When you've done that, all you gotta do is you already have a system. Once you have a system, you just fill in the system.
Why don't you share this with the world, man?
I am going to. I'm writing a book about it.
Awesome.
And I'm writing a book on how to become an exceptional physical therapist. Since I work in a more outpatient sports clinic, and I try to take it from that perspective. And yes, we can do more. We don't have to get burned out. There's always going to be stress, and there are always going to be other things, challenging things in your life. But clinical care should not be. You can continue to excel where you are, and know what you want to be.
Awesome. Well, let me know when the book comes out. All right. So we talked about the average day. I know what you do outside of that as well. Is the job stressful?
Very good question. We work with a lot of patients, who has pain, and who has a lot of challenges in their life, and who have a lot of issues, through their bodies. And when people have pain, their emotions get affected. They are not themselves. We had to work with that every day. So yes, it can get, complex, and then some people are very complex, have complex issues too. It can be very stressful in that sense. But at the same time, if you think about it, compared to other healthcare professionals, no patients are dying in front of us, and we don't have to deal with those type of situations, So the stress is everywhere, but I think if you compare to other healthcare providers, we are, I wouldn't say as stressful as them, I think the most stressful in our professions is workplace, rather than actual job.
So I'm guessing the hospital is probably a stressful place, though.
It can be, and it could be any place actually. And I'll give an example what can be stressful to clinicians. I already talked about, I think, time management and then documentation. If you're not really good with time management, and that only gonna increase your stress. And if you don't have good mentors, that can be very stressful. For example, you are a clinician and you are new, and you don't have a lot of experience, and you come across a case which is very difficult to handle. If you don't have a mentors, then it's really going to be very stressful how to manage the case. It's good to have mentors. It's good to have great staff, and good to have good management. So when you have all those things, any stressful situation can be put at ease. So those are the very important things you got to look at if you want to look for a job. Do you have mentor? There's a mentorship out there. Do you have a good environment? There's a good team out there. Because they all factors in.
How do you find these things? It's difficult to find out whether you have a positive team that you're applying towards. Especially when you're a hungry student, right? Just trying to get a job because you have bills to pay.
True.
How do you actually I don't think there's Google reviews with respect to MMA Sports and Rehab is an excellent employer. I know they have Indeed. On Indeed, they have that, and Glassdoor, they have that. But do you like? How would you recommend somebody looks into the positive environment?
Very good. And I think the most important thing is go to that place.
Yeah.
You know, go to that place just like you did shadowing.
Fake an entry.
No, even
kidding.
you can do that too. But let me be very straight. Like if I'm applying for a job, I would go and spend 4 or 5 hours, at least a day or half day, in the place that I'm going to work to, and I'm looking at how the interactions are, to get a good environment check of like who are the people that I'm going to work with. Am I going to like these people? You better like that people because you're spending more time with them than with your compared to family members or your friends too. You're spending 40 hours with them. You better like them. So that is a very important gut check out there. Other thing is you ask questions. Do you have mentorship? Do you have somebody who is there if I have a questions about? Ask direct questions about that. And do you have scheduled mentorship? Or do you have mentorship if they need to?
What was the first?
Schedule mentorship. Schedule mentorship is like something that you can ask, like, hey, if can I have 1 hour a week of like, I need to do. If I have any questions, you can tell me.
Just like scheduled mentorship.
Scheduled mentorship. Like, I don't know if there is a word for that. I just made that up. And but like some kind of mentorship program, or like for example, I give you an example. I have my peers, and I continue to provide mentorship to everybody. I work sometimes because sometimes they just come out of school, they bring a new PT, and I work as if they are my students. They give them clinical cases, or on Lively, I work with them on their cases. So they will ask me, Dr. Ujjwal, can you take a look at this? I'll go in, do some assessment with the knees and say, this is what I think, this is what they think, or how do I work it? This patient are not getting better. Then we go to case management. Okay, this patient is not getting better. It's been 2 months now. What do you do? And then I ask them, what do you have done? You have done all the things that you should do. A patient not getting better. Okay, let me talk to him. Let me talk to her. What are the other options out there? You have done all the good rehab. This is not helping. You're still having symptoms. I think it'd be beneficial. You can get an injection now to calm the symptoms down. Or what? Based on all these things, it looks so unstable that it might need surgery. Let's get an MRI first. So you make those clinical decisions based on what you see. So sometimes we help people by not what we are doing, but what we come up with more help. I give you an example. I had this patient who came to see us for a month, and she was not getting better, and she was a very appropriate physical therapy patient. She had lateral elbow pain, and it was not getting better. We call tennis elbow, by the way, And then eventually I told her it's not getting better. It's only getting worse, with all the exercises, How about we get injection of a steroid to calm all the symptoms down, She ended up getting injections, Her symptoms went away. We did a 1 week of rehab. She was good to go. So all we need was just injection to calm the symptom down, to get the nervous system down, and then the rehab was much better after that. I'll give you another example, where I saw this patient, she was having, actually, I will go different route. I had this patient, picture of health, picture of health, cross-country runners, does 50 miles marathon, stuff like that, and he came in with a knee injury, and I do just a regular checkup of blood pressure, and as I was checking blood pressure was high, I check it next time, it was high, I end up telling him, hey, you know what, it doesn't sound normal. You are a 50-year-old and you are picture of health, you have high blood pressure, and he ended up checking with the cardiologist. He's having some heart issues, need to have surgery. And he had no issue with the heart in terms of symptoms. So sometimes we catch those things. Sometimes, one, we can do case management. A second, we see a lot of nuances, because we spend so much time with our patients.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. I forget what I was asking you.
I think I went to tangent a little bit.
Yeah. We were talking about mentorship activities.
Correct. Sorry. Yes.
No, that's good. I think that was answered. So it seems like you have to work within a team. So, because there's a group of PTs and you guys work off each other. So we were talking about how do you find out whether you're getting into a good environment or not? And that's where we went into.
I think, like I said, going back to the same conversation, you go and observe clinic for at least 4 hours or a half day, or even better, a full day, because that's investment of your time and the investment of where you want to work. You ask direct questions: is there a mentorship available? And if you have those two questions, have a satisfactory answer, that's a good place to be in. you know and even if they don't have it, then they do have a lot of mentorship everywhere else too. They do have like online mentorship, there's a lot of avenues out there where you can get mentorship, and with the social media now and everything, networking has been much better, so they're out there. You just have to look at it, and you have to find something that's out there, because there are help if you need help.
Okay, so moving on, I'm always interested. Are there some special perks to being in a profession? Because, there's certain things that you learn only once you enter the profession.
Mhm.
So are there some special perks to being a physical therapist that you would only know once you become one?
Perks, perks. I would say I'll tell you one perk though. It may not be the actual monetary perk, but most clinicians, especially most physical therapists, especially in outpatient sports, are athletes, or they are into gyms, or some kind of sporting. They are part of that, And if you go to any gym, if you go to any party, you're gonna get a lot of requests about their neck pain, back pain, shoulder pain, knee pain, and free advice. It's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. I love it actually. And you gotta get stopped a lot, And about perks, there are a lot of companies out there who gives
I just stopped you for this. All right.
I love it. I love it. But at the same time, there are some companies out there who gives healthcare providers some discounts on shoes and something here and there. From grand scheme of things, I have to say, the biggest perk of being a physical therapist is the flexibility and the autonomy. Hey, be an entrepreneur, create your own practice. I'm not saying that you have to do it, but you can.
The free thing, advice, it's really funny. As a lawyer, you bump into that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't like it, because from helping people perspective wise, I have a useless job, right? I do tech contracts, right? So, I mean, when people come and ask me, they're asking me about wills and estate, and they're talking about family law and divorce.
Gotcha.
And it's like, people just think you're a lawyer, so you can help with anything and everything.
Gotcha.
And it's like, I can probably, if I put in time, I can tell you where to go, right? Better than an average citizen who hasn't undergone legal, schooling and practice. But it's just funny because
I bet
everyone's just like, hey man, this immigration issue. I'm like, tech contracts, man.
But I have to say, with our profession though, we're such in a great profession of helping people, And I'll give an example, a lot of examples out there. But when somebody says hey, this can be your patient actually. This usually our patients, I said hey, you help me, I have this 10-year of pain, discomfort, dysfunctions that wasn't there, and I tried everything, and you are the one who helped me. You cannot buy that. You cannot buy that. It's such a gratitude, and this type of stuff has only helped me to learn more. It has learned me to better clinicians, and so can provide exceptional care to these patients. And it's amazing, And when people talk about what have you have done, be it review or say it in your face, and then they will come, a family member would come in, friends will come in. That's what our practice is based on actually. A lot of organic referrals, and like yourself, you came with your friend, and they talk about it, and especially we have built a reputation as well. They're talking on social media and stuff like that. Hopefully not bad things, but a lot of good things. And it's amazing it's very satisfying, very gratifying, and to hear all those things, and that only gonna make you as a better clinician. You want to learn more. One thing is funny. I'm going a little tangent here now. When I came out of PT school, one thing I did good was I went to residency, and again, my second doctor DMD right after actually, which a lot of people actually wait for it. And I thought I knew a lot, and I thought that was it. That's what it takes to become a physical therapist, and I can fix everybody, And I had this big chest up, attitude, I was like, just give it to me, anything, anything that comes to me and I can handle this, and I thought I knew it all. That was my
Those are the 20s, man.
yeah. Definitely I was in 20s, and that I think I had it all, and then it always comes down to like cases and people, and it's like, oh my god, it's not working. It's not working on everybody. Then I end up learning more, and then learning more, different school of thought, like different practices and different techniques. So many different things I've tried, like to continue to improve my clinical practice. And the one thing I learned, and a lot of people will agree with that, is the more I learn, the more I'm learning right now, and there's so much out there to learn. I feel like I still know less. When I knew less, I thought I know it all.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And but at the same time, like it's a never-ending process. And I constantly change how I practice every 3-4 years, and I constantly adding new things. Just recently I have added now ultrasound, not like ultrasound as a technique, but more like a imaging, like where I'm looking at the tissues on if I'm doing grinding or if I'm looking for some kind of tears, I can look at it, So there's so many things out there, so many different school of thoughts who can help you, what kind of treatments you want to do with the patients. If one thing doesn't work, there's other things out there. If other things are out there, then other things out there. How can you include a lot of things we do? Like, for example, as a physical therapist, we are trained for exercise-based treatments. That's the bread and butter of our profession, our exercise dosing. But it's not the only thing. When you have pain more than 6 months, it becomes a chronic pain. When the chronic pain goes into play and the pain is there for a long time, now your psychologist is involved. You have not only physiology, but your now nervous system is involved. How can you combat that? From exercise standpoint of view, from desensitization technique standpoint of view, from psychology and standpoint of view. How can you improve? From nutrition, from standpoint of view, there are a lot of things you can do from nutrition to combat chronic pain. How can you use proper hydration? If you are not hydrated, you can be in pain. You have a lot of swelling, you have a lot of headaches out there. How can you use sleep and recovery? We don't think about those things. We don't think about what can I just add on. Sometimes sleep and recovery and rest can do the trick. There's so many intricate things out there that can affect you positively rather than just one thing only, and sky's the limit. I just went on a tangent.
No, that was cool, man. Lots of good tangents. I feel like anyone that's listening, if you see, the thing is, a major reason why I like to do this interview in person is because I can feel the vibe, and it's powerful, right? And you just don't get that via Zoom, right? And so in your presence, I can feel the passion.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
So I mean,
I love my professions, and I really love what has transpired over the years, who I am and what has become. I'm very blessed and with this profession. It's an amazing profession that we spend so much time and energy with our patients, and we see so much nuances. And it's such a gratifying things that you feel actually, to make you a better person, and we have a life to live, and you want to live a life where you are happy. Money makes you very happy, but money is not everything. So you have to have some form of spiritual thing, along with the mental thing to create happiness, and this has given me that actually. I'm very blessed to have a great family and friends and peers and mentors, but my patient has definitely given me that happiness, by seeing their stories, by being part of their stories, and it really made me, who I am right now, and continue to thrive and do well in future, and then the list goes on.
So clearly you like your profession a lot, right? You mentioned one thing that you disliked about it.
Yes.
But one of the questions that you always want to kind of, let people know.
Yeah.
What are some things that you don't like about your profession?
Yeah, I'm like, just like any other profession, there are a few things out there. The one is any kind of bureaucracy, unwanted rules and regulations that doesn't enable you to fully do what you want to do. Like in the past, I'll give an example of a direct access rule in the past where you cannot see a patient's more than a certain amount of days, whatnot. You
Yeah.
have to collaborate with the physician for the continued care, stuff like that. Things are changing for a better way, so that's a good thing. And I think that has to be one of the biggest thing. And other thing is definitely reimbursement. As much as what we do and what kind of obviously, and everybody is biased. Every professional will say they are the best and they are important. So I'm not gonna discount that. I'm not gonna fight over that. I'm a little biased when I say that too. Our profession is one of the important profession in our healthcare. So we do deserve a little more for not only just myself, but for my counterparts and my peers. That it'd be really nice to have a little more reimbursement so that we can get paid more for the things we do. I'm like, we're doctor level clinicians, but not getting as much compared to other clinicians. So that'll be my two things I don't like about my professions. But rather than thinking about negative things, you can always think positive, and you can make the most out of it if you want to.
Fair enough. Different perspective. Different side of the coin.
Yeah,
Um,
there's always going to be.
so now that you have 15 years of experience, let's talk to Dr. Ujjwal that just transferred from Arlington, Texas to Arlington, Virginia, and you were just starting your career. What advice would you give that young man about how to be, like, what would you tell him, like, to make his journey as a physical therapist better?
Actually, let's go back a little more. Let's go back to me being just a usual, and don't have any DPT school, and how do I do it better. So let me start I would start early. Don't do what I did. I went to undergrad, I did a degree in biotechnology. I was in research, nothing wrong with that. But I didn't do good enough job of thinking about my profession early. So if I was you and you're in high school, please think about what you want to do early, so you're going to save a lot of time and energy. So if I was myself and I was in that shoes, I would look out. If I want to be a physical therapist, I want to look out and do a lot of shadowing way early, so I can see the intricate things and nuances about the professions early. So, and then if I go to a bachelor degrees, I would get a degree in exercise physiology, because that is one great profession that you can really utilize in physical therapy school. It doesn't mean you cannot have other things. If not exercise physiology, I will definitely, if I want to be a great clinicians, I want to use psychology degree. We use psychology day in and day out. It's very important that we need to understand the study of mind of everybody. Once you have a good grasp of psychology, you can have a trust of people. You can do what you like them to do, in a good way. So those are the two things I definitely want to change what I would do. Start early, shadow PT, more learn about professionals, build a lot of professional relationship, and definitely get a degree in what I would be more beneficial. Definitely have a good prerequisites before I graduate, because I didn't do that. Don't be like me. I did 4 courses after I graduated. That's a lot of time and money that I spent that could have been avoided. So these are something that I would have done early. And then I went to the PT school. And once I go to the PT school, then I did a lot of things right. In a sense, I had a good, I'm very blessed. I'm very blessed to have a lot of good mentors and peers who guide me. And I started residency from day one. My first year I started residency. I did my DMT, which takes another 3 years. So I did a lot of schooling. Funny thing is, I avoided physician route because I thought I would not want to do a lot of schooling. But it's I think my nature that I just want help and learn more, and a big nerd I am, that I end up doing a lot of schooling, actually. A lot of schooling, a lot of certifications, and even with the physical therapy, actually, and just don't want to be just average, you want to be exceptional, you want to be a resource for your patients, and so you can continue to provide a great care. And so that's something that I would definitely change and do.
It's funny, when I was young, I really didn't want to study much either. And then I became a lawyer.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it seems like the books just follow you.
Yeah, I think it's a passion. Like,
Yeah.
it's a passion. Like, once you become passionate, like, about what you're doing, then it drives you. You want to do more. It's like a drug. In a good way. And you want to do more so you can get more. Out of it. Like I said, like, when my patient tells me, "Hey, you are the one who helped me. You are the one who has solved the problem. You are the one has helped me so much. You have all the blessings. From me." I cannot buy that. It's just such a powerful thing to have that blessings and gratitude, and it's just like I want to do more, so I can help everybody that I can. I want to help better. I want to help fast. And I can help whatever I can with my knowledge and with my degrees and what my profession allows and beyond.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I close each episode off by asking my guest these two questions, and I know you prepared for them. So what is the best career advice that you have received?
Great questions. The way I would say this is like, choose a career that you're very passionate about, that you love, be part of it, like, and you make sure you make money out of it. Money is not everything, but money needs to be something, So you have to combine the passion and money at the same time, And if you do that, I'm like, you're going to have a great life, you have everything follows from there, so make sure you're passionate about it, make sure you love them, and make sure you make money out of it.
Some good advice, because money gets a taboo for some odd reason, but I mean, it's a prerequisite to life.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't really buy that cabbage unless you got some dollars, right?
True. Money is not everything, but it's something. But however, like, you have to, on the other side of the coin, if you ask me, like, what is the worst advice is like, do everything for money,
Yeah.
because if you do that way, I'm like, and you don't even like what you're doing, in the long term, you're gonna hate your life, you're not gonna enjoy things, and it will affect your work, and it will affect your mental being, your spiritual being, and it will affect you as a who you are, and it's not gonna work in the long run. So money should not be the only factor,
Yeah.
of what you want to be, what profession you want to go. It should be one of the big factor. It should not be the only factor. I think passion and money, again, it's my perspective, has to go together.
So it's not just your perspective. So I'm a big fan of Ali Abdaal.
Yeah,
Ali Abdaal has a wonderful podcast.
gotcha.
And through him, I learned about something called the 80,000 Hours Podcast, which is basically a podcast, not a podcast, it's actually a business,
Yeah.
which is designed, say you spend about 80,000 hours at your job over the course of your life.
Yeah,
A bunch of these guys got together and they studied anything and everything with respect to professions,
yeah,
right? Me being my career shop,
yeah.
I read into this, and the amount of money you make was not even a factor considered in fulfillment. There's many things.
Yeah,
And maybe I'll just talk to one of them one day. My 80,000 hours podcast guys, let's talk one day. But money is definitely not the only thing. Money is actually one of the lower end factors, because if you enter a profession, if you think about it realistically, when you enter any profession, you are pretty much trying to take a route in which you're earning some money. Right now, there's a greater ROI in some professions
True.
and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, the further you go away from coming out of the profession, the less money matters.
True.
Right? So
True.
in the beginning, it matters a lot because you're trying to pay off your school debt, this and that, blah, blah, blah. But then when you get into family life,
Yeah.
and as you
It
start...
comes to a point. Yeah.
Exactly, right? Like money won't matter as much, and the other things matter more. How fulfilled you feel, right?
It's a great thing you say. Like, I teach this to my students actually. Like, so when you look at the health, because we're living this life, we're just living this life. We want to do something about our life. We want to be happy. We want to be healthy. So we can maximize our life. And one day we all gotta go. Going back to life and healthy. When you say about health, like, the way I like to categorize is like, we talk about physical health all the time. That's why patients come to see us for physical health. They have something going on, physically, and we address those things with, through treatments, from physical standpoint. And a lot of people think their health is just physical, you know, but there's a lot of other facets of health out there that people are either not recognizing it or not aware of it, So physical health is definitely one of them, and there's a mental health out there, which is being more recognized recently, and there's a spiritual health that people don't think too much about it, that you really have to find yourself,
It's
who you
funny
are.
because I think like that's all I prioritize.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I have a podcast now, and sometimes I think about it. I'm talking about careers. Like my bread and butter would be that.
Yeah, yeah.
All I've focused on in the past like 10 years, I would say, is just mental and spiritual health. And so it's like I catch myself always intertwining my physical well-being with how little my mental output has been. So like, for instance, like when I have a good meditation practice,
Yeah.
I feel like stress levels down. I'm significantly more mindful. I'm way more productive. Injuries just don't appear. And the second, life gets busy, hectic, my practices start dropping.
Yeah.
And it's like this snowball effect, which you can't really objectively calculate.
Yeah.
And
It's difficult to quantify, but the spiritual health, but if you're spiritually really sound and you know who you are and know who you want to be, and how you are happy and what makes you happy, if you're more in tune to that, because everybody's happiness source can be different. You have to find that. You have to think about it, what is that, that you're gonna be happy about,
mhm,
and once you really have to deep yourself that, yes, I'm you can do meditations, you can be religious, you can be whatever that source is, that makes you, and once you have a good grasp of that, then everything comes fall into play. For example, if you're spiritually really well rounded, you are more rested. You have more energy tomorrow morning. When you have more energy tomorrow morning, you are more focused. That leads to a lot of things that goes in positive directions. So when you're going through injuries, when you're going through a lot of pain, when you're going through a lot of difficulty in your life, you can channel the energy in a lot of positive way. There's always two sides of the coin, like you said, so you want to take this route, you want to take that route, right, that route, I have a pain right now, and I have a lot of difficulty doing things that I want to do. So either I want to think that way, or don't have the worst pain imaginable. I don't have pain going down the legs. I don't have shooting numbness and tingling down the legs. I
mhm,
don't have weakness down the legs.
mhm,
You see what I'm saying? So you can take the positive route that I don't have the worst thing, rather than I have this thing and I can do nothing. So if you can channel energy on the positive things, you can maximize of who you are. You can maximize who you want to be,
mhm,
and the list goes on. And then the snowball effects. Just like a snowball affects negatively, snowball effects affect positively too.
mhm.
You know?
Like I was thinking about this. I know this is off topic, but I don't think it's possible to be fulfilled just through career. And I started thinking about this a lot because I started this podcast. But if you want to find fulfillment in life, you kind of have to work on other elements of
True,
yourself.
true.
You just have to. It's like if I were to give someone advice, it would definitely be that your career will not provide you fulfillment. It'll provide you an income, right? And like true fulfillment comes from just working on yourself slowly over the course
True.
of however long it takes. And you'll never be perfect,
Well, never
but
aim for perfection. Somebody
exactly.
says, practice make perfect. It's actually practice only makes you better.
Yeah,
There's no
exactly.
such thing as perfect.
Yeah. And that's what I've learned in life, to be
Yeah,
bluntly honest. It's like because you hit each milestone,
correct.
right? And I remember being at my graduation and it was such a great feeling. 30 minutes later, I'm not even thinking about it. I'm in a car driving home. Great, got this diploma. Then you get your first job,
Yeah,
right? Great high, right? And you get good at your practice. Then you get your first client. Great. and
You constantly hit milestone the milestones.
exactly. But none of them, they're these temporary,
Happiness,
yeah,
temporary
right,
happiness.
exactly.
It's
And
a
then
it's a moments.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so I mean, I feel like what has brought me a lot of fulfillment is just working on myself and becoming way more aware.
Very true, and this is very true. And it can be different for everybody.
Yeah.
You just have to find what makes you tick. And I think working on yourself is the most important thing you have to do. Yes, you gotta work, you gotta provide for your family, provide for yourself, you gotta pay your student loan. These are all important things. But what happens is the people get so bogged down on those things, people forget who they are, and they become a machine.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, our lives continue being, and we go too far behind, and you're so much unaware of what's happening, so much unaware of who you are, you're just too far behind.
Yeah.
So I think working on yourself, finding yourself, easy said than done, because these are all basically a bunch of words. Is very important. And you really have to kind of really sit down and say all right, okay, what makes me tick, what are the things out there, and everybody's gonna be different. And as long as it's positive and not affecting other people, that's good for them.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I started this podcast, because
This is amazing.
I realized I
amazing.
enjoy talking to people. And
I can see that. If you're doing this 100 times, you learn so much. You meet a lot of people, And I think the first thing I said to you was I congratulate you for doing this. Me as a student, I knew nothing. Obviously the time were different. Times are different right now. But this is amazing for anybody who is listening and watching this. To be able to learn so much from all these different professionals out there. And it's just a novel thing to do, and then it's great, and I wish you all the success. I hope this only continue to go on, and I can only imagine how much you're gonna learn and how much you're gonna get out of it. It's just amazing. It's just, I can only imagine.
I really already have. It's been, I think, I was talking to my wife, and I was discussing with her. She asked me, she's like, what do you like about the podcast?
Yeah.
And, first, just talking, I enjoy it. But meeting passionate people is just probably the coolest experience, because almost everyone that comes on the podcast is particularly passionate about their profession.
Got you.
And so you can see that radiating, right? And there's this goosebump feeling that you get when you're talking to people with passion. Right. And so it's just awesome. I think
It's
that's
amazing.
my
I hope
favorite
it comes
part.
out from me. And,
It does. It really
and
does.
because I'm not that person. I'm like I said, if you look at my personality, people who really know me, I'm a very, very reserved person. I talk very less. I try to avoid people actually.
I think this has been a 2.5 hour interview, man.
I never thought that I'll be able to do what I'm doing right now with you. It's just not in me.
Yeah.
It was not on me. But again, I'm I think the biggest driving force was I want to help people. And to be able to help people, I have to do this.
I will say you're I think the third or fourth guest that has said that they're introverted.
Mhm.
And I find that hilarious, because I mean, it's good for the viewers, because when you're 18, 19 years old, you're under the impression that, oh, I'm introverted, and I shouldn't enter these professions.
Gotcha.
And it's
No.
the actual truth is that you have to learn how to get out of your comfort zone.
True.
Right? And at some point you'll have to do it.
True.
There's not this magical job which will just give you anything and everything that you always want.
True.
Right?
Very true.
And there's going to be elements of it that you
Of
will
course.
enjoy, and there's going to be elements of it that you won't. And so it's funny to see that, this is episode 9. Almost half my guests have been introverts, right? So that's really funny. Well, thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for this opportunity. I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, it's been awesome. And I think we have a very solid idea of how to become a physical therapist in the United States.
Yeah, I hope I was able to give some insights, and I hope it was hopefully not bored, and hopefully it was entertaining, and thanks for listening. My story, I'm a little guy from Nepal, and living my American dream, and I'm really blessed. I have a great family. I have 3 kids, beautiful wife, and and a great team, and great patience. I can think of more, I consider myself very lucky and very fortunate and very blessed to be where I am right now. And thank you for this opportunity to share my story, and I really appreciate this.
You're very welcome. And whenever you get students that want to find out about the profession, tell them about this episode.
Definitely, definitely. Thank you so much again.
Well, that's it for this episode of the My Career Shop podcast. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you have a better idea of how to become a physical therapist and what to expect once you actually become one. Details about this episode and the career of a physical therapist are on the My Career Shop website, links to which are either in the description below or show notes based on where you are watching or listening from. If you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button, leave a review, and comment on what professions you want me to invite next and what other information you'd be interested in learning. Until next time.